Now, it does appear to me that I'm receiving some news, chess.com experiencing some technical difficulties, and have decided that ultimately they're going to restart the tournament due to some DDoS attacks, some server attacks that are coming in and contributing to some of those technical difficulties that we've seen, and maybe some players losing on time or at least struggling from a time-based perspective. So reading this information as it's coming into me right now, they've decided to restart the tournament at 9 a.m. Pacific. That's 6 p.m. CEST, 9 a.m. Pacific being my time. And so that's some information to be handing to everybody at home, which means about 30 minutes from now, we are going to be restarting the tournament from round one, ideally having solved some of those technical issues. That means we've got 30 minutes to take a quick break, to kind of reset. We'll return. We'll give you guys another appraisal of how the tournament stands and what to expect going forward. And then ultimately, we'll get into the game. So stick around, stick with us. We apologize for the technical difficulties, but we are working through them as quickly as possible. We'll see you back here in just under 30 minutes' time. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Freestyle Friday. Take two, Electric Boogaloo. I'm your host, James Dash, here with Peter Lecco. We're saddling back up after some unfortunate technical difficulties. Peter, I'll just let everybody at home know real quickly that a significant number of players were ultimately unable to relay their moves to the server in rounds 1 and 2. And that's why we saw maybe an unusual number of players losing their games as a result of flagging on time. And so ultimately, chess.com has been investigating the issues. We have determined that it will be a full restart of the tournament, so you can scrap all the results that you saw from the first 2 rounds of the day a bit earlier. And ultimately, we will just kick things off as if we're starting on a fresh foot here today. So, Peter, I'll welcome you back in after that false start, if you will, and some results that we'll now forget. We're looking at 11 rounds of Swiss Freestyle Friday chess action ahead of us. How are you doing?
Yeah, James, I'm actually very happy and very relieved because somehow it felt that something is not right. We were speculating what could have been. And, regardless of the results, as a player, you feel that fair play for all is the most important thing. So a full restart is absolutely appreciated, I think, by all the players. And we got a free warm up.
Exactly right. So we're officially warmed up, but maybe for those of you who might be joining in, what would have been an hour late to the event, now you're right on time. We can help warm you up with a brief understanding of what's ultimately taking place. Now, Freestyle Friday is something that occurs every Friday on chess.com, and if you're interested, you can go ahead and try your hand against some of the world's best in a Friday matchup. But this is the first of which we're covering live. As Freestyle Fridays will ultimately deliver us one of the contenders for the 2027 FIDE Freestyle Chess World Championship. And so week over week, all of these players are going to be doing battle to try and score points, climb the ladder, and ultimately see if they can be the one to insert themselves in the conversation for a future FIDE world champion when it comes to the freestyle chess circuit. We had our eyes on maybe one of the early leaders when it comes to the leaderboard in Pranov earlier today. Maybe we'll check back in with him, but as well, Vincent Keimer, who we took a look at in our first game of the day. Maybe one of the guys to have experienced some of those technical difficulties had fallen down in round number 2. Again, full reset. Everybody's got 0 to their name as we have the first games beginning to populate, Peter. I think it's natural that we go back to Vincent Keimer, see if he can set the pace, this time playing from the black side of the board here in round number 1.
Yes, absolutely correct. And look at this, just right in time when White made a move c3, seemingly an innocent move, preparing probably to activate the bishop on c2, but suddenly the knight from e6 jumps on f4 with a double attack, knight d3 forking the rook and queen, and also hitting the pawn. And believe it or not, there is just no way for White to protect well against these threats. And this is crazy. He's losing the g2 pawn, and this is a handicap now. Pawn down for nothing.
Yeah, Vincent will snap that one up, retreat the knight right back to that strong f4 square, now protected as well by his centered pawn. I guess the only advantage here right now for White is that you have slightly better development of some of your minor pieces, but the price you've now paid is weakening your pawn structure and creating an isolated pawn over there on the h-file in the long term. Vincent will return to some development now with just a slight edge in this game. But still, plenty of time to work with here for win on the white side. Now looking to threaten that dark squared bishop. Engine doesn't love the move, so what is a tricky position might get all that much trickier here for White.
Yes, it's clear that Black is also trying to bring the pieces because, as you highlighted, yeah, that White got active pieces, yeah, so Black won a very important pawn. The knight on f4 is having an eternal outpost, but let's not forget this is freestyle chess, and this Black's king's position, the same applies, of course, for White. We'll have a kind of tough question to answer. Where will it feel safe? Yeah, because White's queen and bishops are actually lined up towards the a7 square, which would be checkmate if the rook from a8 would be removed. Yeah, and it's also clear that the famous castling all the way to the other side is out of question here because things have already opened up on the king side. So it will be a very tricky position. But this I think it's good news for Vincent because now he can set up this b6 kind of position. Yeah, he also activates the bishop first, but potentially b6. And who knows? Now he might be even able to castle all the way to the other side if he wishes.
That would be quite the tricky castle because you can see here Win continuing to kind of stack pressure, looking for that rook lift, going to slide it over to the B file and really mounting an attack on the Black King. But you still have that defensive resource of the long castle further down the line. Knight jumps to the H file will ultimately trade off for the bishop, so a minor piece has left the board on either side, but that does give white control of the G file. Vincent now offering the trade of rooks here, and it will be accepted ultimately. So we've liquidated quite a few pieces.
Yes, quite a lot. Everything is changing. Everything goes in very rapid pace. Yeah, bishop f7, bishop e8, exactly. There is this pawn on a4, this vulnerable pawn, because if white plays the move bishop b5, then black can trade and finally set up a very solid king's position. Yes, there you have b6, king b7, white's rook on b5 is out of play. Yeah, because just alone, yeah, the queen is heading to defense, but Vincent will just parry this with queen c4, queen d7, yeah, on the board, and nothing works for white.
Yeah, and this is incredibly difficult all of a sudden. While it looked all good there for white in terms of having the initiative to launch the attack, like you say, now it feels like my major pieces are kind of stuck. They're cemented in place. And so it's going to be Vincent who has the opportunity to kind of finesse the position a bit.
Yes, and now he activates the queen. Yeah, he was in time to queen takes f5, queen d3. Look at now, so white's queen on b3 is stuck because the white's king is vulnerable. The rook has nowhere to go. White was only hoping, yeah, and he has to go for a hopeless rook end game. Okay, takes. Vincent will activate the rook, and it should be a technical win in different ways.
Playing up a pawn. Yeah, playing up a pawn, which is the benefit of having picked up that pawn nice and early with his knight move. Now that feels like an eternity ago in a 3-minute game, 2 seconds increment. Again, as a reminder for those of you who might be joining us early on in this Friday morning, here round 1 of an 11-round Swiss, looking for Vincent to pilot this rook endgame with an extra pawn to his name to a victory here. Still not going to be easy, but doable.
Yes, not at all, because actually he got a little careless. He felt like he just brings the king and then he will slowly win. But all of a sudden, after rook f3 check, okay, king g6 will be played, and now it's the money move. That does white have a good move, because if not, then black will just slowly win this position. And according to computer, there is something very special, because if not, then in couple of moves, black will be already probably close to winning.
Yeah, I'm cheating by using the engine lines here, but the options for white here are primarily to keep that rook on the F file. He opts for just a king move as well, but largely wanting to maintain this position here from white, right? Don't let any more forward movement come here from the black side of the board, as you're highlighting a possible offer of trade for the rooks, which would end up in a king and pawn endgame. Just wanting to make sure that your king is correctly positioned then for the race across the board.
Yes, but I'm a little bit puzzled that why is this kind of equal? Black is a healthy pawn up. There is no entry square for white. Black can also keep on marching with his king. For example, king g4, and potentially go king a. Okay, Vincent goes h3, so he wants to go rook h4 check, and then enter with the rook.
Okay.
I think this is practically winning for black.
Well, practically winning for him, but he needs to get it onto the board in the end. Time, though, is still going to be a factor. And ultimately, it's Vincent who's got a lot more time to his name to work with here up against Win, who's only got 23 seconds on his clock.
Oh, wow. But yeah, this is kind of very tricky now against king h4, because if black plays rook g7, setting rook g2 to win the game, then white plays rook f8, and against rook g2 there will be check, and after the king has to go to g5, then the pawn on h3 is falling. Yeah, so there are all kinds of tricks all of a sudden in the position, so Vincent will have to mix things up He goes rook e7, rook f8, king g5 back.
Well,
Okay,
everything
check,
that
rook
you've just
f7
talked
check.
about has played out onto the board. Yeah, kicks the king
Yeah, and
away
the
and
pawn on
disconnects
h6
it.
will be lost, exactly. Yeah, so white picked up the pawn, and now, of course, still black is trying something, but now it should be a draw.
Well, so expecting it to fizzle, although in this moment, maybe a bit of a
Yes.
blunder here.
Yeah, now rook b2 check. Rook b2 check is winning. Rook b2 check, you cannot go forward because of rook b3, and if you have to fall back with the king, it's lost. Rook b2 check is coming. It's a big threat. How to protect
And I think
against.
Win ultimately sees it, and that's why you see the delay here, searching for a defensive resource. He's going to go for a check of his own, adding 2 seconds to his clock. But now the b2 check comes in, and now the pawn is off to the races here. It looks like Vincent might be coming away with a win after all in this one. And ultimately, he does get the victory. Vincent Keimer, by resignation, he gets away with it a bit there, Peter. As you said, maybe got a little careless in the middle game there after a winning position, took his foot off the gas for just long enough to create some difficulty for himself down the stretch, but ultimately does get that 1-0. He will be on the winning side of the Swiss system here to kick off the day.
Yeah, but it also showed that what an incredible defense white player Guian was actually delivering with little time on the clock. Yeah, finally he faltered because this rook end game was anyway very tricky. But there are no easy games. This was just the first round, and it's not easy.
No, it's definitely not easy. It'll only get more difficult from here. You can already see some of our results and live populating in the standings over there on Peter's side of the screen. We've got a couple live pairings as well still up here on my side. Divya Deshmuk actually on the back foot right now up against Kalyani Sarin. Kalyani, one of the players that we were watching prior to the restart of the tournament for the day. But here, a rook and pawn endgame. However, it's black who's ultimately got 3 pawns to his name up against Divya's singular pawn, while she will be able to grab 1 more and help equalize that material just a little bit. Still a very tricky position for her, trying to defend against the advancement of both of these pawns.
Yeah, it is just hopelessly lost. Yeah, black is just pushing the pawn all the way to f2, and you will eventually have to sacrifice your rook for the pawn. It is elemental win. And it just shows that Kalyani was the player who had this difficult game against Vincent prior to that. So first rounds, no easy games. It's a super event.
Yeah, without a
That's
doubt.
it.
Still playing through on this one until that resignation comes in from Divya. So Kalyani ultimately picking up a win. That's going to feel really good as a rebound because, like you said, had that game up against Vincent to kick off the day before the restart. He took a loss that time around. Now he gets to, kick things off with a victory here. That's going to be, or rather, maybe do leagues for the momentum that he's feeling going into the second round of the day.
Yes. Also, let's just quickly highlight the names. Yeah, like okay, Pranov is the leader of the whole tour. I mean, the whole tour so far. But also Notrebeck, Yakub have in action. We haven't seen him in the first 2 runs. Pranesh, the very young and very strong Indian chess player, also Ramesh Chess School, has been the second of Vaishali in the candidates tournament, helping Vaishali win the candidates and being able to challenge for the women title. That's an incredible success there. So Pranesh is also playing here. Alexander Bortnik is here. Samsudin Vohidov, and we have already talked about people like Jeffrey Chong. Also, we have seen Aravin Chithamlan. So many brilliant players are playing with us today.
Many brilliant players, and all of those brilliant players already in to game number 2. So let's dive in alongside them, taking a look at Vincent Keimer once again, this side on the white side, this time rather, on the white side of the board. As you can see already, a castle on the board there. First castle courtesy of make.com, one of our lovely partners here for freestyle chess, up against Rose Atwell, a FIDE master. So Vincent Keimer, the expected favorite in this one, will now castle to match his opponent. Appreciating the space that he's already grabbed for himself here on the left-hand side of the board. A bit more of a conservative setup, if anything, here for Rose on the black side. But right now, early on, look at this. I mean, the pawn, like the control of the center of the board, the left side of the board now has become control over the center of the board. There's a lot of pressure here mounting for Vincent Keimer.
Yes, Vincent is having a fantastic position. Yeah, everything comes naturally. The position flows by itself. This pawn on e4, knight on e3 combination. The knight is threatening to jump to f5. Then the bishop from c1 will target the f4 knight. Also, black has trouble already in the center with the e5 pawn. Yeah, g6 played in order to avoid knight f5. I wouldn't even be surprised if the sacrifice would work, but there is also no reason at all to the sacrifice. Maybe you can just play knight g4, follow it up by putting pressure on the e5 pawn. Maybe just activate that queen with queen a2, just to say hello, I'm also in the game, because black's queen on a8 is stuck forever.
All right, so Vincent goes a different way because of the pawn push there by Rose, removing the option of that f5 square. Instead, he jumps to g4. So slightly more conservative move, but still achieves what you're pointing out there with the arrow, allowing that dark squared bishop to target the knight in the center of the board. At the same time, the pawn, which is defending, is also being threatened. So there's just a lot of tension here, and it's ultimately going to be up to Rose how she wants to solve that tension. She decides to reinforce the pawn, and Vincent will take that opportunity to now strike on the left-hand side. Just feels like pure aggression out of Vincent at this point, as once again, the response is coming on the right wing by Rose, and H-pawn launching forward. Everything's under threat on this board.
Yeah, I think that this hits Vincent a bit, because he knows that he has an overwhelming position. One thing, he doesn't want to be forced to spend too much energy on finding a very strong move. Yeah, he would love to just rely on his hand and just squeeze and win the game automatically. But after h5, he will have to spend time and energy, and he goes for it. Knight h6 check. We might be seeing some tactical outcome. Knight f5 check. The sacrifice that I highlighted earlier is very much in the cards, and I believe it will be played.
Well, this is the moment for him to think before he decides whether or not he wants to, quote unquote, throw that knight away. And ultimately, he does land on the decision as predicted by Peter Lecco. A bit of a reaction out of Vincent following the speed at which Rose decided to take back. Wonder if he thought of something a moment
look
too
at
late.
This. The king is walking into the center to f6. Now Vincent goes d5, kicking the knight away from c6. Where do you go? That was the reason why Vincent also played a5. Wants to squeeze from every angle. And yeah, if takes, then he wants to take and move the bishop. I think this is very strong. Takes, you remove the bishop, and all of a sudden with c4, you activate the queen and give a check. But Vincent goes for g3. Wow. I got so excited that I saw that the queen on a1 could deliver checkmate.
Yeah, and possibly was on his radar as well. But he does decide to go a different way. Pawn to g3. Again, just continuing to mount threats to this one knight. Yeah,
but okay, let's take knight takes d5. Let's create some mess. Yeah, just because finally, if the pawn moves, no, bishop c8. No. This cannot be right.
No. Yeah, at this point, we're just resetting it feels like we're resetting the pieces for the next game, right? All the pieces returning, back to the 8th rank means you're just not going to have enough defenders in place to deal with the threats that are about to come through here for Vincent Keimer. So he's going to snap off that, singularly strong placed knight there for Rose. We do see another flurry of trades of the minor pieces. So, maybe a moment to breathe here for Rose ultimately, but it's just going to be a reroute of the pieces now for Vincent to mount another attack on the king.
Yeah, if your king is the most active piece in the position, that tells it all. Don't do that. Yeah, f takes c5, luring king takes e5. Please come. c4 check is coming. Everything is coming. Bishop f4 check, queen e5. Everything is coming.
At this point, the king has made, a third of the moves on the board here for the black side of things. That's not what you want to see at this level of play. It is the type of movement that a player of Vincent's caliber is going to easily capitalize on. And now he just grabs more space with the centralized queen. The resignation comes through. Vincent Keimer, he moves to 2-0 to kick off our Freestyle Friday. We'd expect nothing less from a player of his caliber early on.
Yeah, but we have seen already surprises in the tournament. And I also see results. Pranov has also won comfortably his game. Pranesh has also won. Yeah, basically the favorites are cruising, but there is a big game. There is Ikoria against Notrebeck Yakub. If we could head there, that would be fantastic.
Let's do it.
Because Corey there is also been there for a very long time, being a very strong player. The sister of Jorge Corey, the brilliant Peruvian grandmaster. Yeah, but that's it. Black is winning the game based on this pin against the knight.
Yeah, knight's completely locked into its position. The king as well feels very vulnerable over there on the right flank. We do see a little bit of a threat mounted for just a moment there, stacking the queen and the rook, but we'll just see Notrebeck sidestep out of that one, bringing his king up to the 7th rank, tucking it in there. Nice defensive resource. Now a check and a capture back here.
Yeah, king c8, queen a4, because black has no time. Only 5 seconds. Bishop c5, bishop b6, cemento, and then black wins on the board.
Well, he finds it immediately. 5 seconds here to work with for Desi. She's still fighting on, doing her best to make things messy, but you can see the improvement of the pieces here, ultimately for Notrebeck.
Yeah, that bishop is a monster, not only defending, but also attacking.
Yeah, more pieces come off the board. So having that extra minor piece to play with is what we expect to give Notrebeck the win in the end. The time will tick down, and that is a 2-0 start there for Notrebeck as well to kick things off. And so a lot of the names that you called out at the top of the day so far through 2 rounds are feeling very good about their position. The question is, when do those names start running into each other in the Swiss system, right? Because as we know, yes, they're all destined to run into each other if they keep performing at the level that they are.
Yes, sooner or later it will, but there are so many players, yeah? So usually the top players are seeded, right? So as long as there are many other players, they are always playing against a little lower seed. But if it continues like this, 4 out of 4, 5 out of 5, then we will have already all those clashes. But one should not rule out surprises here, because we are talking about freestyle chess and we are talking about 3+2 time control. We did see also now here in this big time scramble between Daisy Correa and Notrebeck Yakuboev that the 2 seconds increment changes things. Yeah, that there is no chance of really flagging if you control your clock and the position. You cannot run out of time.
Exactly. Yeah, we would expect nobody to lose on time with that increment unless something goes horribly wrong or they freeze in the moment. But at that point, you are playing largely on intuition and instinct. And so, again, highlights kind of the importance of setting yourself up, brilliantly in the first few minutes of the game, so that in those time scrambles down the stretch, you don't end up in a losing position, and you can pilot it at least to a draw or a victory. As we zoom in on one of the few remaining matchups here in round number 2.
Yes, it was a very, very tricky night end game in Maxim Borisov against Huong Dui Dao from Vietnam, I believe, or where is Huong Dui Dao, Korea? I don't know. You have to get confirmation.
Yeah,
and
but
this
two very strong players
can be lost. Yes. The c pawn
can be
is
lost because there's a pawn in
forward.
play, right?
Yes. And the c pawn is the best pawn in queen endgame, because there are many different pawns which are objectively not winning, but the pawn on c4, according to computer, is kind of a victory. But in a blitz game, what does it mean? That it's just the start of the game. You start pushing it, the pawn will go all the way to c2. And also, white's king on b6 is not ideal, because finally the winning method is always to interfere with the queen against your opponent's queen, giving checks. Yeah, and then white's king is not feeling safe. It should be somewhere on h6. It should be far away from action.
So it's far away from where it wants to be, which is far away from the action, as you say. White queen doing her best to get involved, but ultimately black's king is placed so safely. Can I afford to trade my queens off if I'm in black's position, or do I need to keep the queens on until my pawn promotes?
No, if because you see now, so the white king is very unfortunate. There, it takes away the possibility of giving further checks. That's why this king would have had to be on h6 in order to have some chances. Now black just queens the pawn, and it is all over. Why? Wow, he even gives some checks, but this is just playing with the opponent.
Yeah, and maybe grabbing a couple seconds back, right? With that 2 seconds increment, you can quickly gain a little bit of time on the clock. And there you have it. Black taking that one in the queen and pawn versus queen endgame, gets the promotion, moving to 2-0. Joining the likes of some of our leaders here through 2 rounds at the beginning of the day. You can see over on the right-hand side that column of Freestyle Friday Championship points. That's what each player is ultimately fighting for, as well as their share of $1,000 prize pool here on Freestyle Friday. But the more points you get there, the better you'll stand in our overall standings over the course of the year. And that's how you have an opportunity to fight for the 2027 FIDE Freestyle Chess World Championship title, qualifying out of these Freestyle Fridays. Pranov definitely going to be one of the guys that we have a hyper focus on throughout the day, because he's the current overall standings leader, and he is currently 2-0. But we won't forget the likes of players like Vincent or Notrebeck or Alexander Bortnik, Pranov as well. All of them starting at 2-0, all of them on a collision course for later rounds here today, and all of them the type of player who can walk away our Freestyle Friday winner. Looking ahead towards round number 3, I don't think too many surprises so far as I'm taking a look at the standings. I haven't seen anybody uncharacteristically fall out of the overall standings just yet, and awaiting eagerly those pairings for the 3rd round.
Well, actually, there is already action on. You know, the 3rd round has started. And even I would say that because we have already covered Vincent now in great detail in the first 2 rounds, I see a pairing, Alexander Bortnik against Anna Muzychuk. I want to go there. I want to see this, because
Let's do
we have
it.
already talked about that. Bortnik is also one of the leaders, and Anna Muzychuk is leading the women's section. So let's take a look at these 2 brilliant Ukrainian players.
Yeah, countrymen. But in this moment, opponents across the board, both of them standing at 2-0. And we have a slight edge as we dive into the board here, given to Anna Muzychuk by the engine, equalizing in that moment. But so far, the knights are in play. We've got symmetry on the left-hand side of the board when it comes to our pawn structure, but we've foregone symmetry on the right-hand side of the board.
Yes, Bortnik has sacrificed the pawn for initiative for this monster knight on e5, but Anna is doing incredible job to trying to set up squares for herself. Bishop f5 or knight f5, stabilizing, coordinating, harmonizing the forces. And after all, she's up a pawn. If she's able to coordinate, then she will get the advantage.
This is the same pawn as well that we saw Vincent snap up and then pilot to a win in one of our earlier rounds. That G pawn could become the winning key, or the key winning piece rather, for Anna Muzychuk down the line. But how about this? Alexander Bortnik, he's going to kind of lash out by striking with his C pawn towards the center of the board.
Yeah, trying to open things up, because the difference here was that Bortnik deliberately sacrificed the pawn, and there Vincent actually picked it up with some great way. And you see, the move that I was highlighting, that actually black is trying to establish this control on with the knight on f5, was played by Anna Muzychuk 1 move later, but it is the spirit of the position.
Well, quick response there from Alexander. He's going to go ahead and take that pawn, open up the C file a bit. Does allow him very
Yeah,
easily then with a castle to get his rook into play as well.
yes, but the problem is that if you castle, then the king goes to c1 and the rook goes to d1. Of course, you will have to do this and then king b1, rook c1, but it's time consuming, yeah? So maybe he prefers to put the rook immediately to c1.
There you go. Answers the question almost as quickly as we can ask it, where and how will he get that rook into play? He goes for the faster approach, like you mentioned, Peter. Doesn't want to spend so many tempi in order to get the king to safety first. But that does kind of mean that his king is now locked in the center of the board, at least for the time being.
Yes, but you see, he has a clear plan. Wants to deliver bishop a5 check, when after b6 he will have access to the c6 square for his knight. That's why the move bishop b5, the computer does not like it, but these are the moves that drives you crazy as an opponent, because black's king is unable to castle. It's stuck. The rook is controlling, and you see bishop takes e5, a big mistake. D takes e5 will happen, and open up bishop a5 queen. We might be seeing even queen sacrifice checkmate on b6. Wow, wow. What's happening here?
Maybe a bit of crumbling under the pressure here of the moment. An ill-advised move. Makes the plan feel very obvious as well. I mean, already was the intention here of Alexander, as you mentioned, getting both bishops and the queen more involved. Captures with the f-pawn. I would have expected capturing with the d-pawn.
Exactly. Yeah, d5 looked like it's almost winning, but Bortnik has different plans. What is he up to? Okay, he's already now anyway having a wonderful position, because all the positional trumps that black had in the position has vanished. Yeah, it's stuck on with the king on d8. The dark squares, white has just established full control of the position, and nothing really moves for black.
Yeah, it's a good point, because I had mentioned earlier that by bringing that rook over to c1, Alexander had essentially foregone castling rights, at least for the time being, keeping his king in the center of the board. But his king is not the one being pressured or under threat. Ultimately, he's the one launching the attack. So for Anna, much more uncomfortable to have her king still centralized there. And even now, we're connecting the rooks. King slides up to d2. Makes it easy to replace the rook on the c file if it's ever traded off. And now just a bit more jockeying for position, trying to kick that light squared bishop away. Will do so.
Yes, Anna is making progress in order to stabilize her position. The problem is that, practically speaking, with 19 seconds and this position where white can just risk-free put pressure and play on forever, I don't really see her surviving this in the long run.
Hey, pawn to h4. Have the option.
Yes, and now white gets access to the g5 square. Not a problem. Rook c5 can be played now. Rook c5 was very tempting. Now Anna takes, and she will try to set up some blockade. Because forget about the f5 pawn, that's not important. The king safety.
Yeah, that was a very good sequence ultimately for Alexander, right? In recapturing, he ultimately got to move his king to safety, but without taking that extra time anymore. Each of the, right, recapturing these kind of forced moves feel a lot stronger. And as we see the eval bar slip even further, you could see the difficulty of the position, and ultimately the resignation here for Anna Muzychuk up against Alexander Bortnik, who he stabilized. He created such a strong structure, through the middle game, and had a clear, plan of execution, as you mentioned, by bringing that bishop over to the left hand side of the board, kind of clamping down on black's position, the safety of the black king never to be found from that moment forward. And then ultimately Anna crumbling from the black side of the board at that point with not too many options. A little bit of fight in the middle game, trying to make things tricky, but didn't find anything to ultimately throw her opponent off kilter.
Yes, it was a typical Bortnik game, yeah, that he's very tricky, creates problem for his opponent, this case for her opponent, and then he's merciless. Yeah, once he gets his type of position. So Anna was doing extremely well for a very long time, but then suddenly she lost control, and it only takes to lose the control a little bit and then Bortnik is already using all his chances.
And we can see over there on our standings, now things are starting to take a little bit of shape. First thing I note is that Pranov actually took a draw in this third round. So again, one of the guys that we were looking at as the current overall leader and maybe one of the front runners for the daily play has taken a draw and now falls half a point behind some of our Freestyle Friday leaders, all sitting at 3 points apiece. Bortnik being one of those players alongside Vincent Keimer. Still a couple games in play, though, as I take a look here on my second monitor. Any of them jumping out to you as ones that we want to go to, or would you prefer to go back and look at that draw that Pranov ended up in?
Yeah, maybe we can take a look because that was also a heavyweight clash. When I was thinking like which game to choose prior to the run, then Marco Materia against Pranov was also very much a top candidate. So let me pull the game up. Yeah, here it is. It is only 16 moves altogether, but what 16 moves? It was super interesting. So what did we see here? D4, D5, C3. So far symmetrical. And then suddenly something extraordinary happens. F3, F5. The symmetry has been broken. White is fighting for the squares with knight H5. Knight F7, knight F4, yeah, playing on dark squares. So it seems like white is achieving something, strategically speaking. Takes on E5, knight E5, bishop G5, check. It almost looks like black is in a hopeless situation because the king had to move to D7, so you lose the right to castle. What happened here? How did he survive? Queen E3, rook E8, and this queen E3, which was so natural, and after knight C5 check, king C7, all of a sudden this pin caused some problem. And finally, white even took the repetition with bishop f4, king d8, bishop g5, maybe showing a little too much respect for Pranov. But this is also one of the things. Yeah, you are leading the tour. Then everybody feels like, oh my God, yeah, Pranov is very dangerous. I have to be super careful, and you might be missing your chances.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. It does feel like maybe a little bit too much respect given in the repetition here because, one, forcing the king movement, right? No more castling to come. It's going to be difficult to find that king safety, but also the squares in which you force that king to move, blocking in those bishops, right? I'm also hindering your development. So I would have liked to have seen maybe a little bit more effort to extend the game, improve that position, and just make your opponent squirm on the other side because of the difficulty of his ability to kind of move and maneuver his pieces. Either way, Materia decides I'll come away with a draw against one of the tournament leaders, and maybe that's enough for him to be happy to ultimately start climbing the standings. But 2.5 points apiece means they are now half a point out of first place and now solidly in the chase pack, if anything.
Yes, I don't like the attitude, yeah, because I know that Marco is a very strong player. He's very young, yeah. He's the big hope of Italian chess. The French chess. Only his name is so Italian that I want to see him, succeed. And he got a great chance. And look at the clock situation: 2:35 against 1:38 at this moment. Take your time, find the move, and we see the top move, Queen D4, suggested by the computer. But if it would be a computer move, I would not be talking about it. It's a very human move, very natural move, because you pin the king and you are preparing to open up the position. Yeah, for example, the big difference compared to the game is that after Queen D4, if black plays the move rook e8, which he would have done anyway, probably, because it's the useful move, then white is able to open up the position with e4. And then you follow it up with bishop c2 and you castle. Yeah, the long castle will be king to c1, rook to d1, like in classical chess. And it is basically almost out of question that black can survive this. It is very dangerous position. But it only took him one move, and he spent less than 20 seconds for queen e3. You have to feel and sense the critical moment, that here you could have taken even maybe 40 seconds. You play queen d4, and then would have been no way Marco would have not crushed through in this position.
Yeah, so perhaps a learning opportunity, again, as he'll reflect on it, I'm sure, at the end of the day, if ultimately the rest of the results don't go his way and put him into solid position. But away we go into round number 4 already. And you can see over on the left-hand side of your screens there some of the live pairings that we have in play. Obviously, we've got Vincent Keimer and Alexander now going head-to-head, 2 of our tournament leaders. That could be a fun one to take a look at just stylistically. I'd like to see how maybe Vincent deals with a player like Alexander who likes to play with some tricks, ask some questions, poke and prod at his opponent. But Vincent, playing ever stable typically. And then the one at the top of the screens as well, or top of the standings, Pranesh as well. Perhaps we can take a look at that one as it concludes. But we'll dive in first with Vincent Keimer, who's already got a minute advantage on the clock ultimately. Couple pawns, fairly well advanced, but not too many of the major pieces in play. Need to remind ourselves of the starting position, though, here, because it does look like we had a castle to get that rook that you're highlighting there involved already.
Yes, because thanks to this pin, there is the possibility of jumping with the knight to c5, but then black just falls back with the queen to 8. And if it does not deliver a decisive blow, then it would be premature. So Vincent plays bishop e4 after spending quite some time. He's probably hoping to... What is he hoping to achieve? I was trying to highlight something which was not even possible. I did not realize that the queen on e1, rook f1 combo. I thought like Vincent wants to activate the queen on the long diagonal. g5 played. But now already I can play knight c5. Okay, Vincent goes h4, h6. What I wanted to highlight that maybe after this change of structure, already going for this takes is kind of possible because there is this eternal f5 square then for white. Tempting.
Knight to c5, I can confirm, was the best move in the position. So good eyes there, Peter, on that one. But Vincent decides not to go for it. Ultimately, things are kind of locking up on the right-hand side of the board. Still a little bit of tension with those 2 pawns staring at each other. But feels like it'll be a little bit more difficult to make too many improvements or advancement on the right-hand side of the board. But the bishops feel very strong ultimately for Vincent in the long run, working with the pair, but also great sight lines for each of them across the board.
Yeah, but I would also highlight that no, knight takes d4. I don't like knight takes d4. Okay, maybe it's possible, but I thought like black should try to establish control of the e5 square somehow. That kind of came as a surprise. What is Bortnik up to? How he wants to strategically approve his decision? Because if white just plays b3, yeah, there you go, queen a4. Wow, blue FC instantly blitzed out. What a move.
Is a2 a poison pawn, or can we afford to take it and then retreat diagonally?
Yeah, but then rook a3, the pawn on a7 will be hanging. Yeah, so it's what a move, and it was clear that Vincent had anticipated the queen a4 move. Bishop d5 played. Now, what does it mean? If white plays the move rook a3, I think black will sacrifice the queen. It will be a positional queen sacrifice. Yeah, so Vincent doesn't let it happen. Takes
almost
e4.
Surprised. I'm a little surprised we took that bishop trade. All my opponent's pawns are on dark squares, and I just gave up my light squared bishop.
Yeah, but it's about fighting in the center. Yeah, energetic play. And black has not yet castled. So Vincent is very much hoping that he can just storm through black's defensive lines. Yeah, just ace-3 kick that knight away to start with.
And he'll do that. Knight now going to have to retreat. 2 options of where to go. It goes a little bit more central.
D5.
Yeah.
This surprises me. Again, the e5 square. Why to block things? I'm surprised. Knight d4. Bortnik down to 10 seconds on the clock. How do you navigate this? The knight is getting trapped. Bishop g1 is coming.
Oh, lashing out. Maybe that right there might be feeling a bit of the time pressure. An ill-advised pawn push, but can Vincent capitalize on it? It would be en passant that we're looking for here, and he does go for it.
Yeah, he takes. Yeah, you need to open up the position. Yeah, DC knight c6, but what is the follow-up?
Yeah, but that's a nasty pin now. Our knight is completely stuck in that position.
Wow.
Not the most accurate here.
But look.
Whoa.
Look at Black's king just evocated to the other side of the board with 5 seconds on the clock. Castles. A total shock.
Yeah, you've got to remember that resource in freestyle chess. It'll always come as a surprise late in the game to see the king make such a huge movement to the opposite side of the board. Still a tricky position, though, here for Alexander, and an even trickier. Yeah, the queen is trapped. The time is looking terrible for Alexander as well, and you can see a bit of resignation on the face. The question is whether or not the resignation will be on the board, slapping his head even.
Yeah, it's a piece. Yeah, just when he felt like his king got to safety, then his queen gets trapped. But that was the strategy of Vincent. Yeah, that he sensed that I don't have to go for a checkmate. I can just control everything. Now queen e1.
Control of the
professional
board,
move.
control
Kick
of
that
the
queen
clock.
away. Bring that bishop also into the game with bishop g1 would be tempting, but also some break with e4, e5. Yeah, he goes for bishop g1.
Should move quick pawn push here by Alexander. Looking for those finishing touches with only 14 seconds on the clock.
Yeah, rook h3. Bortnik, we know, is very tricky. Yeah, he's trying to set up some confusion. Vincent picks up the pawn. Wow, really? Queen d2, queen b1. Be careful. Be careful. Kings are out of control. Queen f1 check. King c3. What's happening?
Oh, Vincent saw something for a moment there.
Oof. And rook a7. Now it's safe. Now he's winning, but it was crazy.
Yeah, it looked like there was even a moment where the computer recognized and Vincent recognized that there was maybe a winning move for Alexander. Didn't find it. And so ultimately, he is right back in the driver's seat. Now the pawns are getting vacuumed up here. And that's the resignation by Alexander. Vincent, he comes away with it. 4 points to his name in a heavyweight matchup there up against Alexander Bortnik. An exciting one down the stretch, to say the least. And again, maybe a move in there where there was an opportunity for a sucker punch and a strike back. But either way, the young German comes away with the victory, and he's undefeated through 4 rounds.
Yes, that was a very important win. But before analyzing it, let's head to Pranov versus Yakub, because that's also a very important game. It seems like Yakub is in a total control, delivering checkmate, and also up 3 pawns.
Wow.
Up 4 pawns.
Up pawns equal in the material outside of the pawns. But as you can see now, even the rook will fall. And that's a quick resignation there by Pranov. So that's a 4-0 start here for Notrebeck as well. One of the people that you called out at the top of the day as someone to keep your eyes on. Those young Uzbekian players in general should be feared over the board. And particularly, it feels like in freestyle chess, they play with no fear.
Yes, no fear. But okay, Yakub is an incredible player. Yeah, he was very close of qualifying to the candidates tournament. Yeah, the World Cup in Goa, he was the semi-finalist. From the top 4 players, the top 3 qualified. Yeah, he was the unlucky one, not making candidates, but brilliant player, not just in freestyle, but also in classical. He's already, I think, 2,700 and will be climbing forward.
Well, right as we expected, around round 4 is where the standings are really starting to take some shape here, as you can get a look at the overall standings for the day through 4 of 11 rounds. We do have 3 players sitting pretty undefeated at the top: Notrebeck, Vincent, and Dao. They are all going to be fighting for their share of $1,000 in the prize pool, but as well those Freestyle Friday points. And then, of course, a whole slew of players at either 3 or 3.5 points, still well within reach of our top contenders, and still 7 rounds to go to make their moves. So nothing is decided just yet. And ultimately, the pairings will get closer and more difficult as the day rolls on.
Yeah, wow. And Marco Materia, yeah, whenever he does not settle for a draw, he wins. Yeah, he's 3.5 to 4. Of course, yeah, it's kind of a joke. We all understand, yeah, because yeah, there is this respect, yeah, that okay, you face Pranov, and you are not sure of yourself. Yeah, it's very similar when you play against Magnus Carlsen. You see ghosts everywhere. Yeah, because he's so strong.
Mm-hmm.
He can create problems from every angle, and everybody knows that. Yeah, and that plays on the mind of the player already prior to the game. And then he feels like, if there's this safety net that I have the chance to shut the game down, then already before the game, probably you kind of settle in your mind that I'm gonna take that chance, yeah. And that means that you are slightly on the defensive side right from the start. And I remember that this was one of the key issues playing Garry Kasparov, that you have no right to be afraid of Garry. You have to respect him as maybe the greatest player of all times, yeah. But if you are up against him, no fear, enough respect, but believe in yourself. That's the only way to fight.
Well, maybe you can even speak more on it, both from the perspective of your own career, but also from the perspective as a coach for the younger generation. How do you instill that idea? How do you get to a place, both as a player, but also as a coach, where you ultimately have the confidence to send, let's say somebody like Vincent Keimer up against Magnus Carlsen, that they'll have that belief, right? That they ultimately have to have that belief that they can unseat the current world number one. That's I think, a difficult idea to kind of inject into a person when they're staring at a monolithic figure across the board.
Yes, because it is not enough to tell him, don't be afraid and be fearless and go for it. Because if you feel like you are not strong enough, then those are just words, and you will not really believe in it. Yeah, so you really have to work as hard as possible in the training to be able to create for yourself the circumstances that you can believe that even if I'm up against Magnus Carlsen, yes, he's probably the stronger player, he's the best in the world, best of all times, but I still have a chance because I'm strong. Yeah, this was always the main kind of idea that I was trying to give Vincent. Yeah, that respect enormously important, but focus on yourself. If you are strong enough, if you think you are strong enough, then you can take on any player.
I imagine in standard chess, maybe at times it can be easier too to kind of fall back on your preparation or the confidence in your preparation around openings, or maybe something that you and your team have identified as a line that you want to play towards, or an understanding of how your opponent's approach, might ultimately play out. In freestyle chess, you don't have the benefit of being able to fall back on some preparation and say, okay, well, as long as, I adhere to the principles of what I've been studying and the lines that I want to go for, the tricks that I'm, planning to lay out in front of my opponent. When it comes to freestyle chess, it is both, a good thing and a bad thing. It seems that it's a level playing field. It's great that we both don't know. So maybe, if I find that one unique idea, I can ultimately take down, the world number one. But by the same token, this means that in the moment, with 3 minutes to my name, I need to outplay the world's best, and that is also a really difficult kind of I think thing to wrestle with mentally.
Yeah, for sure. In freestyle chess, there is just no safety net. Yeah, because you are on your own right from the start. Okay, sometimes if you have the white pieces and there is a very solid construction, you can play it safe. Yeah, we have seen this narrative already, that you just make very reasonable, solid moves, and you ask your opponent, do you mirror my strategy when you are limiting your chances to win? Or do you try to break the symmetry and accept the worst position, for example? Yeah, but those are also quite rare positions. That's the beauty of freestyle chess, that you also never know exactly what's going on, and computer is not always right. Yeah, I noticed already positions which computer thought like, this is not so bad, but practically
Mm-hmm.
humanly on top level it was very unpleasant. And there were positions where computer, the starting position, gives a clear advantage for the white player, for example, but even as a top player, you don't really understand how do I navigate this position. Yeah, so one should also not be fooled by computer evaluation and freestyle at the beginning, because it comes down to human perspective very much.
Yeah, and you just don't have the time, right? You're plopped into these games immediately you're taking a look at the position and the clock starts ticking, you have to make a move. You don't have the benefit of 3, 5, 10 minutes to evaluate the position. So it does feel like, to a degree, even the approach early on has to be about minimizing risk. Even, I mean, for yourself, when you're taking a look at these positions, or imagining putting yourself in the position of these players right now, would you be playing to maybe your normal characteristics as a chess player, or do you feel like your approach and your play style would change in this kind of a format? Do you feel like people are going to be less aggressive and less, or more risk averse, rather, let's say, when it comes to how they ultimately approach these games because of the nature of freestyle chess and so little time?
Yes, things change when it's 3 minutes time control. Yeah, for example, my feeling is that you should not try to punish your opponent at all at the beginning, because that would require from you spending too much time. And if something backfires, then you have no time to react for the rest of the game. Yeah. So my strategy certainly would be to try to go along my intuition, my feeling. Yeah. Stability, safety first, but at the same time, getting control of the position. Yeah. So safety doesn't mean trying to play for a draw. No, 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 not at all. But just that you don't do anything fancy. You make sure that you are following some kind of a logic behind your moves. Yeah, because then you can play faster. If you are trying to use that, wait a second, maybe if I find a brilliant move here, I can get a clear advantage, but I have to spend 2 minutes and then I'm stuck with 1 minute on my clock. That is too much of a risk to take. It's probably better to just rely on your intuition and make your move that basically comes from your soul. Yeah, because all the top players have their spirit, and follow your spirit.
Yeah, I didn't. I'm still waiting for my chess spirit to become fully formed, and then watch out for me in the next Freestyle Friday. I'm telling you that. It's an interesting point, because it does feel like maybe it's more of an underdog mentality. The idea that you'd look for kind of that one knockout punch, that one really tricky move early on that can completely warp the position. But ultimately, it does feel like over the course of 11 games, the people who are going to find themselves at the top of the standings are the players who have that more controlled approach, who ultimately just have the fewest number of mistakes or poor moves, at the end of the day, than, let's say, brilliant moves. I think it's almost more about minimizing the mistakes than maximizing the brilliancies.
Yes, there you can put it like this, and also by just making normal moves which are good, maybe not best, but it puts pressure on the opponent. Yeah, because uh, it is not easy to come up always with a good move which also suits the position. Yeah, so if already you can find a good move that suits the position, that's already basically the winning strategy in this time control. Yeah, because then you can play faster. You might get a slight advantage. You might get a you might be up on the clock, and then this combination of uh, different elements are adding to the pressure on the opponent, and finally there will be a mistake that you can capitalize on.
Yeah, well, so while we've been waxing and waning on what we've seen so far, the players have had a short break. They're allotted a 6-minute break following rounds 4 and rounds 8. We want to make sure that they have that opportunity to step away from their computers, go to the restroom, grab a sip of water, whatever they need before they reset into a 5th round, which we're diving into currently. And once again, we'll go to 2 of our tournament leaders here. Vincent Keimer, 4 points to his name, up against Pranov, who sits at 3.5, so half a point behind. A decisive victory here for either player would do wonders in terms of creating some more separation in the standings. It's going to be Vincent from the black side of the board, Pranov from the white side of the board, and off we go. We can see already the fianchettoed bishop here for Pranov with the white pieces. Vincent has that option available to him, and he'll elect to go there now. So with slightly differing move order, we still find symmetry through the first 5 or so moves of the game.
Yes, symmetry, but with a lot of finesses, because the reason that those moves are played, yeah, first of all, also because of respect. Both players have respect for each other. Vincent knows that Pronov is very dangerous. He plays with the black pieces, so safety first approach is kind of required. And Pranov knows that he's up against Vincent, who is the big maestro of freestyle chess. So it's kind of interesting to see the approach of Pranov. Normally he's very aggressive, and now he takes it slowly. Just wanted to highlight one small nuance here at the start, that after b3 e6 there was a threat of bishop a3 check. Yeah, that was the reason why Vincent played the move e6. That's why the move bishop b2 happened. That's how Vincent played the move f5, getting the symmetry, and after e3 settling bishop a6 check, Vincent said, no thank you, I will stop you with bishop b7. So those were the ideas behind these moves, and then we see the action heating up. g4, long castle, knight c3 on the board.
So castle commitment here by Vincent. We're set up to castle as well for Pranov. The question is whether or not he will elect to go for it.
Yeah, and he was the one who was able to get the g2, g4 break in. This kind of strategically very important, because white has also this very nice little move, queen g1 to g2, putting some more pressure on the long diagonal, also freeing the rook into the game, potentially also targeting the pawn on g7. So Vincent opted for d5. And after g takes f5, e takes f5, Vincent wants to measures. Yeah, he understood that if he just stays passive, it's not going to work. He will be slightly worse, and he's trying to create chances. If that knight lands on e4, that will be everybody's game. And forget about computer evaluation that white is better here. It's just a very complex middle game position.
Well, looking for them to solve and work through some of those complexities then. You can see Vincent, bit of a stunned look on his face at the moment, trying to find or chart a pathway forward, and giving a good think here as the clocks are just about to equalize at 1 minute and 38 seconds apiece. Retreating move from that knight also opens up the dark squared bishop on the long diagonal. You got Peter highlighting a couple knight jumps to get the white knight positioned neatly towards the center of the board as well, eyeing that e5 square.
Yes, bishop f6 had to be played. It was also the move that, in my mind, was kind of almost obligatory. The problem, however, for Vincent is that he's fighting against himself here, because he would love to be white. Can you imagine if Vincent is playing with the white piece? He would be so happy. So, but he understands the problems. He understands what white is playing for. Yeah, all these dark squares, trying to establish the contour. So he's also trying to somehow make sure that his queen will get into the game as quickly as possible. Activated 2e6, but he has to keep an eye on the g7 pawn, yeah, because eventually, after, for example, queen e6, bishop f6, knight takes f6, the pawn on g7 could be hanging. Maybe you can even sacrifice it for initiative. It's a very dynamic position.
Now the castle comes through. So we're mirrored in terms of our king setups. Still pretty congested in the back here. Now opting for the trade.
Look on b2. This slightly surprised me. I was expecting queen e6. Now I'm believing that probably Vincent will go g6, queen g7 check, and then the knight will be activated. No, he goes bishop a6. Wow, that was his idea, to try to stop this knight d3 business.
All right, but Pranov will take that opportunity to just grab some more control over the dark squares at the center of the board there with another pawn push, kind of locking things up here in the center.
Yes, I'm not liking this waste of tempo with bishop a6, but okay, Vincent wanted to provoke d4, because then he also gets his possibility to jump with the knight, but he takes on this. Wow, c takes d3. Yes, it stops this, but this structure is very tricky now.
Yeah, electing to double his pawns, right? He had the option to recapture with the rook, but like you say, goes for the pawn instead. It does allow him to kind of stop the forward progression of the black knights, but it might create some long-term problems for him down the line if we do liquidate and get into more of an endgame setup.
Yeah, now Vincent is very happy with black. Yeah, the king moves away, king b8. If queen comes to e6, black has the potential to be better now.
Potential to be better. Now looking to realize that potential. Finally gets the queen off the back rank and onto that diagonal. However, she is staring into a pawn chain for the time being, but does allow another rook to enter the game as well. So improving the position here is Vincent Keimer.
Yes, and his idea is that white is unable to break with e4 because the queen always targets the d4 pawn. Yeah, that's the whole point. And now slowly just stabilizes. Knight to the knight. Somehow try to get to g1, bishop g2, knight f3, knight e5. This is the dream scenario for white. Then all of and that's what Pranov is going for, setting up the knight g1, knight f3 idea.
Okay, maybe but that's a very slow plan. Maybe he's missed it.
Slow, but it's effective. If it gets there, yes. it's a problem.
And he is going for it. 2 more jumps that knight needs to make to land on the e5 square. 1 more at this point. So has Vincent moved quick enough is the question.
But now already the knight on b4 is established. Yes, there is the fork, but do you really want to give up that wonderful knight? It's a question. And it's time scramble, 20 seconds against 15.
Yeah, in the time scramble, he does elect to trade off the knight for the rook. He's going to take the material points and hope that he can pilot this to an end game win. More tension mounting here at the center of the board. Still 7 pawns apiece to work with here.
Yes, and too many the knights are jumping, and after e5, the bishop on h1 is dead. This can be good for black. It's very tricky.
Yeah, that's very committal to bring that pawn all the way up to e6. Very committal, but the engine does not love the capture here.
Yes, no, because now suddenly white's rook gets access to the e file. The pawn on e6 was blocking white's play.
Yeah, it might have felt like it was constricting the position for Vincent. He wanted to remove it, but ultimately he's granted that white rook access now.
And also the queen, they opened up the file.
Yeah. Wow, it took completely winning.
Yeah, it's checkmate.
Resignation here for Vincent Keimer. You can see the disappointment as well, letting that one slip away in what was a fairly even position. Ultimately, it is going to be Pronov who takes it, and he leapfrogs Vincent in the standings from 3.5 up to 4.5, and now knocking Vincent down a peg through 5 rounds.
Yeah, it was a huge win. And yeah, that's actually a position that we can also, if we have a chance, to revisit, because it was so instructive and so difficult to understand with 10 seconds on the clock, that actually that was a poison pawn. Don't touch that pawn. But now all eyes on Notrebeck against Kuong. Will he be able to convert it? Normally it's a very drawish kind of position.
Yeah, it's a good question. With an extra pawn to work with, can white get this one over the line? But it's going to be a check fest as both players
no,
to chase
don't
the kings
king
around.
C4.
That's a bad
Rook
move.
F5. Rook F5 and knight's winning because the king is blocked. Oh no, what a mistake. This is now a construction that the black king seemingly is close but cannot interfere. The rook on F6 cuts on the 6th rank, and white is walking shoulders away from the other side, other angle, and then just wins the game. Rook G6 first, it doesn't matter now, King G4 is coming, and Rook E6 check is coming, and F5 is coming, and it's game over. The king is cut. Oh no.
By all accounts, what could have been a draw is now looking to end in a decisive victory here for Notrebeck. And this is a very important matchup. 2 players who sit at 4 points apiece means Notrebeck will move up to 5 points and current first place in the standings here on Freestyle Friday. There's the resignation. It comes through, realizing off the tail end of a single blunder in the end game, Notrebeck, he's going to get it over the line. He moves up to 5-0. You can see there on the right-hand side of your screen, sole possession of first place through 5 rounds in the standings, just being chased right now by Pranov and Materia, as well as a whole slew of players sitting at 4. But this is where maybe we can go back and take a look at that Vincent game, the position that you were talking about, Peter. Try to identify where it all went wrong.
Yeah, well, all that long, one could say that, you remember I was mentioning that the white knight was heading towards e5, but at the same time, Vincent provoked a4, so he has the knight on b4 to balance the knight on e5. So I would say it's roughly equal position, but then Vincent blundered the exchange with queen d6. He just wanted to stabilize. White opts for picking up the rook, but it's because the position is closed. It's not about the exchange. It's the potential e3-4 break that is the problem, that white is opening up the position, and if the e-file opens, then the rooks will have the chance to invade into black's position. So Vincent is trying to keep the position closed. Queen c6, knight g8, e4, knight f6. And here it was a very tricky moment also for Pranov. He was down to 17 seconds against 19. We are seeing there on the screen. And he should have probably just kept the control with something like rook e2, but how do you understand this with 17 seconds on the clock? So he pushed the pawn to e5, but the reason why I did not like it, that suddenly this bishop on h1 is out of the game for the rest of the game. The pawn chain of black is such a formation that that bishop has just no way of entering the position. So knight h5 was played. White has to push e6, otherwise if black is in time to get the knight to e6, then it will be strategically kind of winning for black. We'll slowly start to put pressure from every angle. So e6 had to be played. Queen e7, queen d2, rook d6. Already I did not like rook d6 because I sense that with little time on the clock, it is going after this pawn. Don't touch this pawn, please, was my trainer, coach of Vincent screaming to me, because you just have to sit tight. How is white breaking the position? I just don't see it. You can just sit, and also you can go with knight to g7, just that maybe I can capture later on. You can also put the king on c7 coming closer and wait for white to do something. In any case, it's everybody's game. Probably it would have ended in a draw. Instead, Vincent picks up the pawn, but then look at the next couple of moves, just shows that why it was such a bad idea. The rook activates itself, you are forced to trade, rook takes e5, and now the white queen will step behind the rook, and there will be this enormous power on the e-file to enter. And that's it. After queen e3, it was clear that there are too many entry squares in black's position, and no way to survive. So a very important win by Pranov.
A hugely important win there for Pranov, overcoming Vincent Keimer, but a very instructive moment as well, right? Where it can be very easy to get caught up in the threat maybe that pawn appears to be, and feeling the need to either remove it and or identifying it as, hey, it's a weakness. Hey, it's offsides, it's on the 6th rank, it's an easy thing to target. But to your point, it was almost a defensive resource for Vincent as well. If you can just blockade it and keep it there, it also makes it hard for white to progress any further. And by snapping it off, you in fact opened up an avenue for white to kind of get back into the game and put the pressure on. So uncharacteristic there for Vincent in a way down the stretch, who normally plays so calm, cool, and collected, but he will fall down to Pranov in the 5th round of the day. But off we go into the 6th round. And we'll first take a look at the overall standings, because as you can see, we have a sole leader at this point through 5 rounds. It's Notrebeck Yakuboyev, who right now has 5 wins, 0 draws or losses to his name. So a half a point lead over Pronov and Marco Materia out as we move into the second half of the day, if you will. And so we'll find a board to hop to, and it would make sense that we go to our current tournament leader up against Pranov, who coming hot off that win against Vincent is going to look to do the same here and maybe strike back, take first place back with 5.5 points to his name at the end of this round. He's playing from the white side of the board against our leader in Notrebeck on the black.
And it's a symmetrical position, very tricky position, because it's so difficult to navigate. And I believe here, in positions like this, where there is no clear path forward, that it is so difficult to play in a blitz game, yeah, with 3+2 seconds. That what you understand that, yeah, white has the break with e4, black has the break with e5, seemingly symmetrical. But when is the right time to open up the center? The king signed the kings are stuck yet for the moment in the center, and also the construction with bishop on c8, bishop b8. There is no clear path for long castle with knight on e8, queen on f8. There's also no clear path towards the other side of the board, and that's why the move f7, f5 is very professional, that you make sure that you stop your opponent of playing e4. At the same time, it also somehow isolates the knight on g3, because this pawn on f5 without the break of e to e4, what is this knight really doing on g3? And black will have the chance of potentially activating that knight from e8 to e4, which will be a very powerful piece. Or also in the long run, black will be the one who will have the break.
And already, you can kind of see Pranov probably not happy to make the pawn move that he just made, but it's feeling necessary at this point. And just like that, Notrebeck will strike towards the center of the board. That connect three. Yes, we have a trade of pawns, but right now he's got total control over the center.
Yes, this is the kind of position that I talked about, that if you establish the control and then your moves are coming easy, in this case, you can not only put pressure on the board, but also on the clock. Yeah, he's already up 30 seconds and his moves are coming very naturally. Yeah, he just stabilizes. Now the knight will come, knight f6 probably is the most natural square, because maybe the bishop will go to d6. He will also be able to play the queen to e7, then castle traditionally to the short side, like in classical chess. Yeah, also white is doing the same by castling, but black has established the center control. The long run advantage is in black side. So all he needs is stabilizing moves. Queen e7, you can play a tempo.
Yeah, following your plan. I do see one problem piece for each player, though. Of course, would be the light squared bishop for black and the dark squared bishop for white. Right now, they're currently tucked behind all of their own pawns that are sitting on like colors. So maybe some difficulty getting those pieces involved in the long term. And a problem they'll each want to solve over time. Retreating move here for the knight opens up the queen on that e-file, just targeting now what is a backwards pawn. Going to be a long-term weakness, it feels like, for the white position. And white's going to lash out here.
But he's trying to, he used the chance, the momentum to go to play this f for c4 idea. And I'm not sure that Notrebeck made the right decision to let this happen, because now this construction with the isolated pawn and the white knight beautifully sitting on d4, it feels like it compensates for all the other strategical problems that white was facing before. Now all the other pieces are already doing fine. I would not even mind being white now.
The computer wouldn't mind it either, given it straight zeros at this point. So after what was a point and a half advantage there for Notrebeck earlier on, things have equalized a bit more. And you can see white has managed to get all of his pieces involved in the game. Rooks are now connected and moved to central files, looking to maybe improve that dark squared bishop that you've highlighted there. Notrebeck will improve his dark squared bishop and connect his rooks. Maybe looking to control the C file in the long term, the only fully open file. He does that now with rook to c8.
Of course. Yeah, he's combining the elements, because there are also some tactical shots. Like, who knows, if the bishop gets to c3, then you have to reckon with bishop takes a3, because the bishop would be hanging. But after knight b3, he can just fall. Wait a second, bishop a4 was possible. Bishop a4 was very unpleasant, but okay, bishop b6 also good. Now black has again established control. Knight d6.
Got control, but
and
still trying to chart a
we play
pathway
a5.
forward.
Yes, and the knight is ready to jump to c4 or to jump to e4. Now again, black is in the driver's seat, and it is so much easier to suggest moves for black. That's why white's clock is ticking down. Bishop c3 played.
Good call out on the clocks. Twice the amount of time his opponent has to work with here. Notrebeck, onus is on him to make a move as his clock is about to hit 40 seconds. Looking for a response and how to improve pieces.
Yeah, at least White has now once again stabilized his construction. Yeah, with 26 seconds on the clock, this is what you need. And Notrebeck is slightly nervous because he understands he has a good position, but what do I do with it?
Yeah, it feels like
H3
waiting moves
creating
at this
loop.
point, right?
Yes, and knight d4. But this transformation of structure, I actually like for White. Okay, takes. White is super solid. Look at this construction. Cemento, super solid.
Yeah. Normally David Howell right now would be screaming about the Connect Four and that for Black things are looking pretty, but as you point out, it's still a super solid structure here for White. All the important pieces in his position, beautifully placed, working in concert with each other. It's got to identify what threats are coming forward here from Black. We're highlighting it now, expecting that light squared bishop to jump in. But now looking to
Yes, but
break
this
the
is the
structure here
problem.
on the right-hand side of the board. Yeah.
Yeah, a new front is opened, and this bishop on c3 is vital against Black's king. Bishop takes d4. His idea is to capture with the queen, but does White have an intermezzo? Fg6. Exactly, White has the intermezzo. And rook g2 is coming. Queen g4, rook g2. How do you survive this with this king on g8?
He's going to offer the queen trade, but of course, Pranov will not accept in this moment. And how about that?
Yeah.
Trade of pieces. It's going to be the bishop for the rook.
Yeah, he had to sacrifice the exchange in order to kind of stabilize his king position. Queen f5, queen h4.
Now it's an advantage position for White, but can he find the win or will he get it on time? You can see there both players working with very few seconds to their name, and the position is going from bad to worse
F5.
here for Notrebeck.
Yes, and again, White opens up the file, very instructive to sacrifice. And now queen e5. Queen e5 seemed to have won the game. Oof. Okay, king e6. Now
Yeah.
Black cements. Now the king is active. So White is sacrificing the rook to bust open Black's king side. King's construction.
An inaccuracy here, though, gives another opening for Pranov. He doesn't find it.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. It should be checkmate.
Now it should be.
Rook g2. We need to.
And you can see King gets chased
rook
over here to
g4.
the side of the board. Oof, very offsides. A knowing nod there from Pranov as he's looking to put the finishing touches on this one. Resignation here for Notrebeck. What a showing out of Pranov there. Moving up to 5.5, unseating the current Freestyle Friday leader in that head-to-head matchup in our 6th round of the day. He now jumps into sole possession of first place, 5.5 points to his name.
Yes, and he has taken down Vincent and he has taken down Yakub, two direct competitors, but Vincent game is still in progress against Marco Materia. Vincent in a lot of trouble by being 2 pawns down, but this is a very special construct. It might be draw. This rook end game, despite being 2 pawns up, might be draw. It's crazy. Chess is crazy. You just go back with the rook to a8.
Yeah, help me understand why this could be a draw, because by my untrained eye, I would see, a rook and pawn against rook a lot of times can still find its way to a winning endgame. You're telling me with 2 pawns, this is still possible to draw?
Yeah, king d3, because there is no way to get past with the black king, and whenever the king comes, then White gives millions of checks, and the black rook is tied to defense of both pawns. Yeah, so it's a very special construction. King to d3, king d2, so check king here. d3, nothing changes.
Vincent just has to prevent that king from making its run to the other side of the board. He even manages to pick up the pawn, and now will be a trade of rooks. Hey, look at that. You can see he kind of feels like he got away with something there by the look on his face on the camera. 0.5 point apiece, the draw between Marco Materia and Vincent Keimer. It keeps them within striking distance in our overall standings, but I'm sure neither is incredibly happy with their overall position. For Vincent, he'll be happy to have come away with a draw in that specific circumstance, but we know he expects probably better of himself. For Marco Materia, he might be looking at that saying, hey, that was my opportunity to get a full point over somebody like Vincent and be sharing first place right now as opposed to be chasing first place.
Yeah, the tournament is very interesting because Pranov is running away with it. On the other hand, there are so many players right behind and no break at all. The very next round has already started. The 7th round has already started. No mercy. No mercy for the players.
That's right. That's right. Only breaks coming after games 4 and game 8. So off we go into round number 7. Maybe we take a look at Pronov from the beginning if we can. And that is what we will do. He is the tournament leader as of right now. Half a point separation over the rest. One of those guys looking to take him down here right now is Da Kwangdui. He's playing with the white pieces here against Pranov. And already we've got a queen out onto the board. So that makes me wonder.
It's like a Scandinavian. It's like a Scandinavian, yeah? E4, D5. How did this happen? Yeah, actually it was a Scandinavian E4, D5, ED, Queen D5, Knight GC, Knight B6, and D3. Really, the Monet's D3. This shocks me. I cannot believe it's almost like but the problem was White was unable to push D4 because then Black castles and takes over the position immediately. There's a pin on the D file. That's the reason why he opted for this, but this is too passive. I don't like this.
Yeah, he had to play more tentatively. It's interesting because the queen gets to come out almost for free in a way. Normally a knight could jump out and start threatening her immediately, right? But as we can see here, the white knight has to develop onto either B3 or D3, doesn't put the queen under threat. So we have this centralized queen that normally could be something that you chase around the board, and it just doesn't feel like that's an option.
Yes, certainly not. It looks like Black has a normal position, but yeah, also Black has the problem that the knights are a little bit strange. Normally they are on c6 or on f6 in classical chess, yeah? So if we are trying to think in Scandinavian terms, then this doesn't do us any justice because completely different rules apply. This bishop f3 ideas hang in the air of hitting the queen. Now also knight a5 hitting that bishop. Why can't I play knight a5 combined with bishop f3? Did Pranov miss this?
Yeah, I like bishop f3 a lot.
But I can combine it with knight a5 and bishop f3. Hitting that bishop.
Well, if I go knight a5, what's the response?
I don't know, but
well,
wow, c4.
C4?
Interesting.
That wasn't on our radar.
Not at all.
Well, he heard me talking about chasing the queen around. He said, "Okay, I'll chase the queen around. Here's how you do it."
Yes, but the c4 really shocked me. Like my voice disappeared for a second because I just didn't know. You know, my body don't do this. But then I'm having a closer look, and I kind of understand why it is possible. Yeah, it's a very specific position. Normal rules don't apply here.
Without a doubt.
Bishop
so
A4,
bishop to A4. Now the knight coming forward. Gets the miss from the engine, but it feels like a pretty natural move, just improving the position of the knight, moving it towards the center, maybe even bringing it all the way over to C6.
Yes, it is heading to C6 in order to establish the blockade that we know in classical. But wait a second. Okay, H7 pawn is hanging, but luckily this is not end of the world because we can move out the bishop. Sometimes the rook is lost in freestyle chess after some queen takes H7, but this is not the case. We just move. And we pretend that it was all part of the... Yes, because bishop E7, knight C5. Knight C5 is the problem. Forget about the pawn. But after bishop E7, I have this move. And if you take DC, your knight has nowhere to go. This is the problem. So back to the official position. Yeah, queen takes E7. Forget the pawn. The problems are the real problems are the problem.
That's words to live by right there. The real problems are the problem, and he's realizing those problems. He's got to connect the
knight
rooks,
c5.
right? That's how you save the rooks. But now, yeah, knight c5 feels like a natural follow. This should have been the idea. So you would expect not too much time to be spent to make this move.
Wow, but he
Wow,
castles.
goes for the
Then it's
castle.
okay, it's possible, but this case we have a game. This is not a decisive move.
No, definitely a more conservative approach. He's going to get the king to safety, connects his own rooks. You can see the long term bringing the rook over to d1, c1, looking to push those pawns further forward. But at some point, we're also going to have to bring our queen back. First, we're going to have a trade of the minor pieces. That almost feels like it improves White's position for him, though, right? Now we've opened the A file. I can just stack rooks if I want on the A file.
Yeah, but he wants to put pressure on the d4 pawn with some bishop f6. Yeah, that is his idea. The big question, will it work? Because White can also start moving with d4, d5, and then after edcd, yeah, edcd, and then we will have the option of eventually sacrificing the pawn with d6 and break Black's construction.
And knight retreats.
For example, now d6 is very tempting on the board.
Wow. Very aggressive move, but I like it. Dao Kwangdui, he sees his moment. He's going to strike. The engine's loving the position more and more as the game develops. We see the knight used to disconnect, but it's going to be a sacrifice of the exchange. Now the pawn falls.
Yeah. This ends the game because bishop g5 adds to the problems.
Yeah, that's a nasty pin right there onto the king. So the queen will sidestep it, but that allows for the check as well with the pin onto the rook.
Knockout blow, bishop c5, knockout blow. Okay, checkmate is coming.
And you can see it. Wow, the knockout delivered in that moment. Pranov, who was the tournament leader, he ultimately falls down in that moment. So just like that, the standings will flip once again. So already through, 7 rounds now here, Peter. We've had 3 different players, each having sole possession of first place at a different time throughout the day, and still nothing is decided. It's only half a point, separation between first, third. You can see Bortnik even now rejoining at the top of the standings as well as he moves to 6 points to his name out of 7.
Yes, Bortnik has won, Vincent has won, yes, so all the superstars are coming closer and closer, but all eyes on Marco Materia against Yakub because those players are fighting to catch up with the lead. So what's at stake here? Black has sacrificed the pawn, but Black has a very solid construction, so very good compensation. Queen takes h5. White is picking up another pawn, but really the king on c2 it can get into big trouble.
Ooh. Don't know about that rook
It's almost finished
just now. Yeah. Forget the pawns. I don't even need to grab them anymore. Yeah, White may have spent too much focus on picking up the pawns down the stretch here. He's now going to have to give away the rook.
Why to allow?
Find a check. Oh!
Why did he do this? Queen f7 check. It's a perpetual. Queen c4 check. It's a perpetual.
Oh my goodness.
Cannot believe it.
I'm stunned as well. I'm stunned. Wow. I mean, Marco Materia, he gets away with something there, finding a draw.
Wow.
I mean, again, it was already a fairly even board state, maybe with a slight advantage towards Black even, while the material advantage was for White. But I think we should pull that back up, Peter, and roll it back a few moves. Exactly. Let's understand how we got to the perpetual.
Well, the situation was that White has lost the control. He's down to 6 seconds on the clock. He's about to get checkmated. And then he makes a desperate last attempt to... I don't know. I don't think that he was hoping on anything because after rook c7, it's clear that if you take with king, you get queen f7 check. And why do you calculate this at all? You can pick it up with the bishop and you are rook up, no checks. And okay, after f takes c6, you might maybe have to fall back with the queen to d6. But I mean, come on, maybe we can even just go rook g2. We can go rook g2, queen d5, check, king a7, and then rook takes d2,
Boom.
checkmate is coming, and game over. But in any case, your opponent can do no harm to you. You are up a rook. And instead, he picked it up with the king, thinking like, I will anyway deliver checkmate on d2. But the problem was that white is not picking up the rook. White can keep on harassing black's king because king b8 runs into queen take g8 check. So that's why the king has to step forward. Then white picks up the pawn with a check, and there's nowhere to run. King b7, queen takes d5 check. If you play king b8, then I can pick up the rook with check. You can't do that. King a7 will be met by queen f7 check like in the game. And king a6, the diagonal is long enough that I can chase the king, and an incredible miracle escape happened.
Yeah, so in a number of ways, weirdly, this draw, perhaps the most stunning result that we've seen so far today, just because there was something as simple as a retreating bishop move to pick up that rook. You're a whole rook up in the end game, and now you can pilot that to a victory. But the time scramble, and as we talked about earlier, I think in so many ways, the winner of Freestyle Friday days are going to be the players who make the fewest mistakes. That was an unforced error right there. And that is one that is ultimately going to come back and eat away at you mentally if you don't end up in first place when you could have come away with a decisive victory there. And instead, you had to settle for a draw.
Absolutely, very well put. Because let's not forget that also Yakub had just lost the game to Pranov, where he also had a good position. Yeah, so suddenly he had a wonderful run, and he created trouble for himself. And creating trouble for yourself is the worst, the biggest enemy of a chess player. Because if your opponent outplays you, it is so much more easier to get over it that, okay, my opponent played a brilliant game, he was stronger. Okay, let me focus better, let me play stronger. But when you had a winning position and then you let it slip like this, that will haunt you forever during the tournament.
Yeah. I can get over my opponent outplaying me. It's a lot harder to get over outplaying myself. Either way, we've got two players who now lead the rest of the field with 6 points to their name. That's Dao Kwangdui and Alexander Bortnik currently. But we have four players in the chase pack, only half a point behind them with 5.5 points to their name. And then a whole slew of players who've got 5 points still within striking distance. Again, if either of those leaders take a decisive loss, anybody else puts up a full point, they're right back tied for even. We still have 4 rounds to go heading into round number 8 here shortly. This is where we will expect, again, the action to continue to heat up. But also, I think, where the conversation maybe begins, Peter, around the tournament meta, if you will, and how you start adjusting your play based on your standings. Because ultimately, you want to grab those points, you want to grab the prize money, right? And so you might have to start playing to the standings and to the eventual results. If you're a half a point behind or you're a full point behind first place, you might have to start taking more risks to get those decisive victories if you ultimately want to claw your way back up to the top. You can't just settle for smooth draws from this point forward if you're chasing.
Well, but I think that draws were not an issue in this tournament at all. Yeah, everybody is fighting, everybody is looking forward for action. Yeah, this is freestyle chess. As you highlighted before, that there is no safety net. You can never choose a solid opening and then just sit on some solid structure. Here we always get some crazy mess, and combined with this 3 minutes time control, that there is just never enough time to digest the new position. Yeah, you have to keep on carrying its tremendous pressure on the players. Yeah, it's I think the best way to fight in the last couple of runs, just to do exactly the same way like you did before. I don't think that you can suddenly start changing your mindset that, okay, from now on I will be more solid, because immediately opponents will use that chance. Bortnik is doing, I think, exactly the right approach. He's going for it. He plays very much in Bortnik style. Let's see if he gets rewarded for it.
And synergy is officially broken on this board. They had mirrored their moves essentially up until this most recent by each player. We have a knight advanced into opponent territory for both players, but on opposite sides of the board currently. Perhaps creating a square here
feel
just
that the
for his,
knight
or
on
I guess he's getting his. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, no, I just want to say that I think that the knight on g5 is giving the white queen more access to be activated. And this is also what black is doing with g6. But you see that thanks to the knight g5 move, white's queen is kind of wide open already on the long diagonal. Who knows if he can follow it up with e4 or at least a timely e4. But there is some hope for white to create something here.
Most
Knight
definitely.
c5.
He as well. He's going to mirror that knight jump on the left-hand side of the board. But quick response here by Dow to kick it back and away.
Yeah, now white will do the same, probably b3. And then if the knight falls back to d6, white can play knight e5. Wow, isn't black in a lot of trouble all of a sudden?
We'll see if it plays out.
Knight e5.
As you've called it.
He's
going to wait.
Wow, does he have the time to wait?
Position. That's a good question.
Very ambitious move. Yeah, FC is a super ambitious move. I just thought like knight e5 was very strong. No need for fancy business.
Well, he's forcing time to think.
What to do with black?
That's
no, but queen g7. No. 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 You had no right to wait here. You had to do something. And besides, what's happening after knight e5? This knight e5 is still the bishop on b1 is hanging. Okay, you see, this is freestyle chess. You think like, okay, knight e5 seems to be winning, but actually the bishop on b1, I'm losing my mind. So that bishop has to first be developed before you can move that knight. It has to be activated.
There's no clear way to develop
bishop f4?
I guess, yeah, just to connect the rook to the bishop as a defensive resource, and that's what he'll go for.
Yes, bishop f4. Yeah, and long castle. But okay, now finally, if knight e5, but if knight e5 is possible, if it's legal, yeah, and it's on the board, then how will black react? Takes. King b7.
Bishops fall. I mean, the black king is quite safe now because all of white's pieces are over on the right-hand side of the board. So long-term does feel like black has, achieved some level of king safety. But now I still struggle for a way to get the rest of my pieces involved and maybe to ultimately launch an attack.
Yeah, the big question, who is attacking whom? Yeah, because there are so many different aspects in the position. Yeah, knight h7, eliminating that monster knight and setting up then the f7, f6 break is a very smart idea.
Well, you have to trade it off, right? Otherwise, you're getting forked by that pawn.
Yeah, but I feel for Bortnik because, yeah, he goes for c4. I got fooled by this knight e5, that knight e5 will be super strong, and then black just shows that forget about it. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, pretty spectacular that this one has played out in the way that it has.
Yes, and there are still plenty of, but knight c6 is probably not enough. Black can just pick it up with king c6. So yeah, takes. But it's not a happy decision to just fall back.
Yeah, but if you had asked me 5 moves ago, maybe, or so, which position I would have preferred to play, I would have taken white in a heartbeat. And how this one's been flipped on its head is quite stunning.
Yes, no, this position fooled everyone, including me. I don't recall myself, blundering a piece, the bishop on b1 for 30 seconds. It's just absolutely unheard of. I'm still under complete shock that, yeah, this freestyle chess, you can never feel safe. Always the ultimate boss is freestyle.
But now I think the thing that I'm looking at here is just how poorly it feels like the white queen is placed on the board. Right? It just feels like it's light years from getting involved in this game, cut off on its diagonal by that black knight and needing to reroute multiple, tempo here in order to get more involved in the game.
Yeah, he uses
I guess that's one way to get it involved.
Yeah, but queen d7, exactly. Queen d7 was a big problem. Now knight e3 check is a huge threat, winning the queen. The knight is hanging, so the knight has to fall back to f4, but we are just losing material. Yeah, g4, okay, played. But white will not survive, cannot survive this. Bortnik is
Well, it's starting to
fighting.
look very ugly here for Bortnik. But yeah, time can still be on his side here. While he is disadvantaged on the board, can he play quick enough? Can he ask enough questions and make it tricky enough for his opponent?
5, maybe just play f5. Okay, he goes for a direct. Wow, super confidence. Knight takes f3 gets approved by the computer. Rook d2, queen d3 checkmate is a big threat, so white has to pick up the g6 pawn. Queen g6, and then queen d. Castles, castles. Wow, with 7 seconds on the clock.
Well, to remember that he has that resource even is pretty massive, and look at that.
And
I
he's
don't
back in the
see
game.
where it is, but the engine says he's right back in it.
But he loses on time exactly the moment when. Wow, but okay, it's so difficult. It's just so difficult because Rook h8 is a big threat. What do we do?
Yeah, but you can feel for him there. Alexander Bortnik, you can see it on his face. Disappointment.
No, and there was this incredible, stunning defense. We have to show it. Just we have to show it because it's incredible. And it was so difficult to find. I turned on the engine, and then the engine shows it that you could have forgotten about but your mind is, you are down to 5 seconds on the clock. You think like, how do I stop Rook h8? No, you don't stop it. You play Rook b1, Rook h8. Of course, seems like black wins, and then you have Rook e7 check. If black takes the rook, then you pick up the rook. There is no problem. The knight defends your king. And once you go king a8, then you play rook h7 and protect on the h7 like this. Okay, this is completely crazy. And poor Bortnik, exactly at the moment when he was back, loses on time because was unable to find the defense. Wow.
Well, he could probably be forgiven for not finding that in the mere seconds that he had to do so. But again, kind of goes back to the point where, especially in freestyle chess, but in the game of chess in general, even down the stretch, you're not necessarily out of it. All it takes is that one misposition, that one opportunity that your opponent gives you with the door open for you to charge right through it. That opportunity was there. It was not capitalized on by Bortnik. So Dow now moves to 7 points out of 8 rounds here. He's in sole possession of first place while we have a couple more games and a couple more results still to trickle in here at the conclusion of our 8th round. But you can see 3 players at 6.5 points apiece on our standings, just half a point behind that tournament leader. And then 3 players at 6 points, still within striking distance. That's the main thing. As long as there's one more round to go and you're within 1 point, you can ultimately close the gap as we get towards the latter rounds of the day. But that's the man to beat right there. Dao Kwangdui with 7 wins to his name, 1 loss, but currently eyeing 10 Freestyle Friday points. And to climb that leaderboard, chasing the likes of a Pranov, who sits in second, shared with Vincent Keimer and Marco Materia.
Wow,
well,
what a
Peter,
dramatic finish we will have.
That's exactly right. We will have a very dramatic finish. I had mentioned earlier that after rounds 4 and rounds 8, the players are given 5 to 6 minutes for a quick bathroom break and a water break. We're going to give you at home the same opportunity, ourselves as well as casters, to go refresh, rehydrate, and then get back in just in time for the concluding 3 rounds of the day. So stick around. We'll catch you back here in just a few minutes for Freestyle Friday and all of the action live. See you soon. Hello, y'all. Welcome back to Freestyle Friday with James Dash and Peter Lecco through 8 rounds of 11 in our Swiss format here. Peter, things are starting to heat up as we do have one player in sole possession of first place, 3 players immediately behind him at 6.5 points apiece. But away we go into that 9th round as we kick things off with that tournament leader, Dao Quang Doi, up against Vincent Keimer, one of the 3 players who could leapfrog him in the standings right here, right now, if he gets a decisive victory. He's playing from the white side of the board, and already we have questions being asked in this one as we have pawns staring at each other. C5, D4. At the moment, a little bit of tension created instantaneously that Vincent will look to relieve, but this allows a rook early out onto the board as well.
Yeah, very interesting position. And knight a6 played. The point was that if black captures back the pawn on c5, yeah, Vincent follows it up with c4, knight takes c5, that if the rook would have captured back, just because this was so important, I think the idea after d takes c5, rook takes c5 was that white might have the move b4 and hitting on the rook and setting up the trade of the dark square bishops when black will lose the right to castle. Yeah, that was kind of a very important small little trick. So instead, the following things happened. Things heated up. We are getting a classical type of position, the Maróczy, similar to Maróczy structure from English. We see situations like this. The white knight is heading to the d5 square. Yeah, Vincent is setting up the knight moving towards the d5, tiny little edge, and very much to Vincent liking such small advantages, nourishing those small advantages.
Yeah, and right away, feels super easy to complete his development as you're highlighting rook to d1, already stacking on that semi-open file. The knight still has that pathway to the eventual d5 square. f2 to f3, though, creating a little bit more of a pocket maybe for the king to slide up at some point and eyeing that e4 pawn push possibly, or preventing the knight from jumping forward onto e4.
Yes, I think it was purely prophylactic, yeah, taking away any knight jump to e4, and he understands that his other knight will be heading towards d5. And transformation of structure, okay. So Vincent actually senses that this c takes d5 transformation is more beneficial than just keeping the d5 square. Very interesting strategy decision.
Without a doubt.
He wants to get
That,
he wants to get the queen to d4 and establish total control. And by the way, the knight will not head to f4. It might head to e3 and then to g4, and knight h6 checkmating ideas might be coming after queen d4 check, king g8. Very tricky position.
all right, looking for, okay. Decides to wait on the queen d4 with check. Instead, he's going to continue to offer this rook trade, but on his own terms.
Yes, because then it comes with a check, and he will be establishing control of the only open file, the C file. So it's a very, very kind of high-class move. Rook C3. The computer did not appreciate it, but I believe Vincent was very happy of playing this move, putting tremendous pressure.
Yeah, just continuing to improve the position. Move over move. Now we've got the rooks double stacked on the E file. You can see the eval bar continues to like the improvement that Vincent is finding for his pieces. Knight coming forward as well, getting more involved. So he does end up on the f4 square, but this is because he can now target exactly that d5 pawn. Still a check in play here for the queen. Just kind of spoiled for choice is Vincent at this point.
Exactly. He has this. He knows that he ideally would play both moves, queen d4 and knight takes d5 together, but it's impossible. And then you have to kind of measure it that how do I start? Yeah, and I believe keeping the threat. Yeah, this was always kind of that as children, we were as kids, we were always taught that the threat of the threat is stronger than the execution. Yeah, so keeping in your pocket the threat and not revealing it right away, and it makes your opponent so much harder to react to.
Well, we're seeing that difficulty of where to go next here with the black pieces play out on the clock. 35 seconds to the minute 47 for Vincent Keimer. It's going to be just a tepid pawn push over here. F7, F6 does prevent the diagonal that queen would be finding checks on in the long term. So now the queen will slide up still to D4, but without the benefit of a check to come along with it.
Yeah, but the combination of factors, yeah, that the weakness on F6, the pressure on the C file, now there are certain things to calculate. Vincent is looking that, can I win by force? Is there a way? Because it looks like there might be some tactical shots already in the air.
Yeah, it is a little difficult to plot a pathway forward.
Yeah,
He is
he
sporting
goes for
96% accuracy. He's going to trade.
exactly. I was wondering about exactly these lines, but I was not sure if this takes look F7. Is this winning? If it's not winning, I don't like it because it eases my opponent's stats. But probably Vincent has seen one move further. Well, I'm not
It
100% sure,
does.
but okay, it looks very tempting.
Yeah, it looks tempting, but if anything, it gives, Black the best position he's had in quite some time, right? Still advantage to Vincent, but it feels like you've given maybe a few opportunities for this one to begin to equalize.
Yeah, to me it was a shock because this was the reason why I was saying that there are tactical shots, and I was calculating this line, and I did not see why it is so great. But okay, he's putting pressure, and Kuang has no time on the clock. That is the problem. A3 played. Where is this knight heading?
Yeah. It's got to go back to D5, I
Yeah, with a
think.
check, but then white in this with king e4 hits the knight, and knight c6 check is coming. He's losing a pawn.
Yeah, there goes the pawn right there with the check and the fork. So now we're 1 point up in material, but beyond that, we now have two isolated pawns, two pawn islands here for Black that he's going to have to try and defend. And now it feels like there's maybe too many holes in the Swiss cheese here for Black.
Yeah, no, this is hopeless. It's basically a designable position. There's just no way to putting up. The knight on b2 is kind of trapped as well. Yeah, white can just play a4. White can do anything. b5 check. Yeah, b5 check played, and then knight is coming. Or
Yeah,
you
but
just don't.
we
You
can
just
bring our
enjoy the
knight. Oh,
position.
that works.
Yes.
Yeah, he's choosing to enjoy. He's choosing to bask in the glory of the position and soak in the sun rays.
Because actually he can also combine a4, a5, and g5, and who will stop those? Yeah, that's what he is going for. There's just no way to d5, but okay, now d5 gives also up the d5 pawn. Yeah, g5 played, and after king f5,
Right.
we
Now
just pick up with the king.
Okay, he's going to go d6. But yeah, you can see the difficulty there for Black. The king can't defend against the pawn and protect his own pawn at the same time. So now he's going to go on the chase. This means we have a pawn hanging. We can pick up at any point. We're going to push to a5 first. And the resignation comes through. Vincent Keimer, just like that, he strikes back from 6.5 points up to 7.5 now through 9 rounds. He's going to snag first place away from our tournament leader in a decisive victory over him.
And you can see those very delicate moments, yeah, that surviving that losing position against Marco Materia, give him the comfort. And he has taken down Yakub with the black pieces. Now he's taking down Kong with the white pieces. Just that scary game that he survived opened him. And for Yakub exactly the opposite. He missed those chances that we talked about, that it will hunt. He has lost the game to Vincent and is out of contention.
Yeah, and it is Marco Materia who's standing side by side with Vincent Keimer right now at the top of the standings. So again, he might be thinking back to that very same game and saying, hey, if I had been able to put a kibosh on that, if I had been able to slap Vincent Keimer down in that moment, it would only be me standing alone at the top. But instead, I'm locked in a battle right now with just 2 more rounds to go. and 2 players at 7.5 points. Obviously, we await their pairings and still some games to conclude here in the 9th round, because there are opportunities for others to join them at the top of the standings. We've got Pranov and Bortnik right now battling it out with 5 seconds apiece. By quick math, Material's even, but it's a knight on one side, a bishop on the other, as we see a pawn fall here for Bortnik with the black pieces. Who's winning here, if anyone?
Yeah, maybe no one. King d4, very precise. Knight takes b6 is met by king c3. So yeah, king e2, bishop d8, king d2. But this is tricky. Now suddenly white is in trouble. g5 played, bishop
okay,
g5.
He's going to offer up. Yeah, he gives away one pawn in order to create a weakness and snap up a pawn on the other side.
No, but this is not working out because the pawns are too weak.
Yeah, now he's going to drop a pawn of his own here. 3 pawns to 2, but the black king has infiltrated.
Wow, now he survives. So, okay, the game will be drawn. Incredible.
Yeah, there was a winning moment there, though, for black, but didn't have enough time to find it.
Yeah, we can revisit afterwards because it was very, very interesting. It was not obvious. Now this looks like a fortress.
Shuffling.
This is just a, yeah, now it's a blockade, a fortress.
And your heart breaks a little bit here for Bortnik, because it's a couple games now down the stretch where he's had, winning opportunities, maybe some small chances, doors that have been propped open that he hasn't been able to squeeze through. So he's going to have to settle likely for a draw again in this one and just sit kind of half a point behind the rest of the players that he's looking to chase.
James, I will be showing then not only that exact moment when Bortnik was winning, I will show the position that Pranov had. You might be changing your mind.
Oh, yes. Okay. I look forward to it as the draw is agreed to here between both of these players. So each getting half a point to add to their score line. 7 points for Pranov and 6.5 for Alexander Bortnik. But right away, I turn to you then, Peter. Break it down for me. Surprise me.
Yes, well, first of all, let me show you the position that I first saw. This was the moment when I already joined and the viewers could not yet see the position. And I thought like, okay, Pranov will win. And then after the move king d6, he made this incredible mistake because, okay, he has this dominant knight. Yeah, he can, according to computer, give knight e8 check and he's winning because the king moves away. King e6, you play king f3, complete domination. The king is setting to come to e4. The knight can give check, jump around and target all the black weaknesses. But instead of this, he made the incredible blunder of pushing f4, and all of a sudden, after he takes f4, his knight is hanging. And not just the knight is hanging, but he has just lost the pawn. And he cannot capture back. Clock was ticking down to 5 seconds. Then he luckily had this knight f5 check, king e5, g4, and he establishes this fortress position. Bishop c1, king f3, bishop d2, knight h6, king e6, back, and of course, Bortnik had to repeat. He had to repeat. He was lucky enough to stay in the game. Instead, played the move bishop c1, and now computer screams that there is this study-like move, knight f5 to h4, winning the game for Pranov one more time. The knight becomes more dominant. White is starting to play king e4, activate the position, and the black plays king e5. Then now white can push g6, and after g6, knight g6, you pick up the f4 pawn, and the knight is a fantastic piece plus a pawn. So missed opportunities for both sides. I would finally argue that it had a logical conclusion that the game ended in a draw because king e4, f3, king f3, bishop, king e5, super important, king e5. Bortnik very alert, activating the king, not allowing this grip because Pranov was definitely counting on bishop g5, king e4, and good luck protecting this position because white has super control of the things. But just quickly to rush to that position that we saw, knight b8, apparently it's completely winning, but it's winning with a very delicate little touch. bishop d6, hitting the knight, which anyway wants to come to c6, so it's counterintuitive. But after knight c6, you fall back with the bishop to c7, and all you have to do is guard that a5 pawn, because that pawn will win you the game. And then you pick up the b3 pawn, and you get access to a4, and then it should be an elementary win. But a very difficult move to find this bishop d6 with 5 seconds on the clock.
Yeah. So again, the nature of freestyle chess, both players at different points in the game had opportunities, both of them at times letting those opportunities slip. Either way, they go to half a point apiece. We're already into round number 10, so we've got to catch up with some games here because, again, just 2 rounds to go now for each of our players to finalize and solidify their place in the standings here. Everybody hunting for that top spot or at least a podium finish, a little bit of prize money, some Freestyle Friday circuit points to add to their name, and ultimately the ability to climb the ladder. We've got Materia and Keimer, who are our current front runners. So Marco Materia would be one matchup to look at. Otherwise, Vincent Keimer, I'd say we lock in on either of our 2 front runners who are looking to continue to separate from the rest of the chase pack. Peter, where would you like to go?
Let's go to Vincent, because he's already in a lot of trouble. He's seemingly lost with white. How did he lose the control? Yeah, look at this. It is just move 10. It's move 10, and apparently it's a completely losing position. Well, it looks very bad because black has not sacrificed anything for this monster attack. By the way, you can't go to d1 because of queen h5 check. And Vincent cannot believe it. Just cannot believe it. Losing in 10 moves in a very important game.
Yeah, he's stunned just as we are.
Wow. And there's no way to fight because even after king f1, king f1 had to be played. But now Vincent needs a miracle to survive the next couple of moves. Not to talk about the game, just next couple of moves is a miracle.
Right. I mean, because at this point, king is ultra unsafe, but now you can't get your rook on g1 involved in the game. It's going to be incredibly difficult. And yeah, just so much pressure clamping down on white's position right here.
Yeah, how you are not getting checkmated, that's the big question. Because with this king on f1 and you lost the right to castle, you have never any safety. Yeah, that the king will stay in danger zone till the end of the game. This queen h5 is a monster move. You can just sacrifice the rook. And I think it was just played. Yeah, queen h5.
It was.
Killing move.
Gets the double exclam. If anything, it's a double exclam just for how dominant the position is here for black.
Yes, and the problem is that, of course, with white, you would at least want to pick up something, but bishop take. I thought like queen f3 check is a very strong move, but computer says that bishop g2 check, but that is, I think, impossible to see. So queen f3 check, knight f2 is the position that the players are calculating, and then knight h3, and you're in a complete box. Vincent clock is also ticking down to 19 seconds.
Wow.
What will he play?
He might not even play. Okay, he does. He's going to bring his knight out to f2. He doesn't want to admit defeat just yet, but realizing the disastrous nature of his position, he gives away the bishop in the end. He will capture back with a pawn here on f4. Castle coming through.
Yes.
For our player
and
with the black pieces.
King is enjoying the party far away from action, and white's king is in the middle of dire straits. So takes. Black can pick up the pawn. Black can give up. Black can also give the check and pick up the d5 pawn. Also, the knight can jump from h8 to g6, joining the party.
Vincent
Queen d4, a fancy move.
Queen out. Oof.
Queen d5. Picking up queen d5, knight d5, knight takes f4, knight d5 was a fork, was a problem, and e5.
Well, just 10 seconds apiece. So still looking for Victor to play accurately here.
King d1.
It is
you have to try to run.
Yeah. He's going to attempt that run. The queen will infiltrate once again onto g2. There goes the pawn, a trade of pieces at the center of the board. Less and less material here for Vincent to work with, though. In a collapsing position to boot, down 2 pawns.
But at least he survived checkmate, yeah? So I think he's happy that he's still in the game. And he blunders the rook on g2. Oh, no.
No
Cannot
way.
believe this.
And Vincent can't believe it either. Oh, what a disastrous way for that game to end for Victor.
Oof.
Vincent, again, he's stunned, sits back in his chair. Go ahead, sorry.
Yes, I wanted to say that actually Victor should have closed this game before, because he had all the chances already when he let Vincent escape to this kind of stuff. When after rook g2, I already did not like rook g2 because suddenly with this king on c8, there are all kinds of checks. Yeah, Vincent immediately jumped on the possibility, setting up the queen a8 check, perpetual ideas, and the players are down to 5 seconds. It's already not easy to win this. He should have look at this position. He had this position without sacrificing anything. White is getting checkmated, a crushing position, and then Vincent somehow hangs on and then not only survives but wins. This is absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I mean, good on Vincent to keep the game at least running, right? To keep it moving, to keep the game going, and again, relying on a mistake from the opponent, right? And that is the nature of it. He did require a mistake out of Victor to get that one back, but that mistake did come, and immediately the resignation will follow because he realizes that somebody like Vincent Keimer, given that opportunity, is ultimately going to take the victory. So just like that, in what looked like maybe a dead lost position, Vincent now finds himself at 8.5 points. He's now leading the tournament once again, half a point lead over Pranov, who also just took a decisive victory over Natalia Buksa. So he gets a full point to keep himself within striking distance. 2 players at 8 points, now chasing down Vincent Keimer with 1 round to go. But Vincent, a guy who's already qualified, as you mentioned, by winning Grenke, he's looking to go ahead and take the top spot here as he joins us for a Freestyle Friday.
Yes, okay, but I'm still under complete shock, and I believe also Vincent, if we have a little time, let's just see how did this first 10 moves happen? How did he end up in a losing position like this? Because we know that he's the big freestyle maestro. What happened? In which trap did he fall? Or did he? I mean, really, what happened here? Okay, f4, he outsmarted himself, or he missed something. b3, okay, everything fairly logical, but Black has certainly solved all his problems. So Vincent, being very ambitious, he goes for knight c3 and he got hit by g5. Oh, wow. Look at this. All of Black's pieces are lined up to make this move perfect. The rook opens up, the queen from b8, the bishop from a8 are jumping on White's position, and all of a sudden White is lost. Yeah, so just one careless move after b6, knight c3, he should have first taken care of the king side, yeah, the right side of the board, but instead played the natural looking move, knight c3, and got hit by g5, and things got completely out of control. In fact, he's just lost.
But how interesting is that? So often on the freestyle circuit, we talk about the threat that is inherent in those cornered bishops and cornered queens, right? So in some ways, it's almost surprising to me that a player like Vincent maybe forgot it or overlooked it for a moment, right? And fell victim to that very same thing. What I feel like is one of the few trends that we've so far been able to identify, you know, only a year or two into the freestyle chess journey at this point, is always the threat of those dormant diagonals, that queen, that bishop staring you down from either A1, A8, H1, or H8, and finding a way to involve them. And it was a beautiful move, at least from the black side of the board, to get the winning position. Unfortunately, could not take that winning position and convert it into the victory in the end. Vincent Keimer, though, sitting at 8.5, as I mentioned before. Pranov and Dao, they're the two who are chasing at 8 points apiece. And Materia still within striking distance at 7.5. But at this point, he relies on Vincent or Pranov, or Vincent rather, falling down in the final round with a decisive loss. A victory would equalize. This is the overall standings as it appears through 10 rounds today. We've got Vincent right now looking to take home 10 Freestyle Friday circuit points. Again, he doesn't need them to qualify to the World Championship, but it does mean that somebody else is not getting those 10 points in their quest to qualify for the 2027 FIDE Freestyle Chess World Championship.
One more time we see this narrative, that Bortnik missed out that win at the end against Pranov and went on to lose to Yakub, and Pranov surviving that scare wins and makes a huge jump, that carrying this momentum, this kind of things are super important because the players never have any breaks. You finish your game and like in 2 seconds or 5 seconds, sometimes, you get the luxury of 10 seconds to get ready for the next game. It's absolutely mind-blowing.
It is. We're demanding a lot out of these players here on a Friday morning, Friday evening, wherever you are around the world. Thank you so much for joining us here as we reach the ultimate round, coming out of the penultimate round and into the final round here, round 11. Only a few players are in position to take the top spot. But of course, there's a reason to play for everything in terms of the podium finish. Again, $1,000 prize pool being split amongst the top finishers, as well as those all-important circuit points if you want to qualify towards the 2027 FIDE Freestyle World Championship. I do see the pairings are out, and now I see the clocks beginning to tick. So we should dive in to our final round here. I think no better place to go than Vincent Keimer. He is the guy who, if he gets it done here and now with a decisive victory, he locks up the top spot. He's the only guy with 8.5 points to his name right now, can move to 9.5 and be uncatchable in his matchup against Afrusia at the moment.
Yes, I think already whatever happens, you also have to give huge credit to Afruza Hamdanova, player from Uzbekistan. Extremely impressive performance. Playing this, I don't know how much experience she has with freestyle. I think that she did play in the Grenke event, which certainly gave her fantastic experience playing against the very best players on the hottest stage. They are in a playing hall packed with 3,500 players. It's a very special event. I had the honor of doing the commentary. It was always, just looking at the playing hall, you got this feeling that, wow, you are in a very special place.
Without a doubt. Yeah, the biggest of the live events, right? Where you really get to see kind of both the top dogs, the big names, the people that you expect to be there when all the dust settles, but you also get to see a lot of the newer faces or, kind of what we'll say is the future of the chess world, right? At an event like Grenke.
Yes, and look at what Afruza is doing. Actually, she puts tremendous pressure on Vincent. White's knight reached the beautiful destination h5, puts this tremendous pressure on the g7, f6 pawns. Vincent was unable to develop the knight from f8, which means that there is no easy way of castling. He goes knight f4, trying to get rid of one of those monster knights. So at least he managed to trade down one. But the problems are not running away. Where do you go with your bishop at all?
Yeah, it's either retreated all the way back to, c7, d. Yeah, there it is, c7.
Yeah, but suddenly this queen d1 is very very annoying. At least I was very bothered by this queen d1, queen h5 idea. I'm sure that white also has many other moves, but intuitively with the knight stuck on f8 and the king still on e8 and white having already completed the development by playing short castle and the knight being on g3, it is crazy.
Well, f4 actually, she beat me to the suggestion of the move. I was wondering if you played e3, do you just try to pile the pressure on, grab some space by pushing f4? It's already supported by the rook. But
yes,
now
but she
queen
plays
d1
queen d1
will follow.
Yes, queen d1, but now at least Vincent can play queen e7. I felt like at least we are in time to get our queen to protect against queen h5 check. Okay, Vincent goes f5. He has completely different ideas. Okay, d4. Strike in the center.
Yeah, it was a quick response there by Afrusia. I'm going to have to grab that up. All right, the queen's involved. Nicely centralized.
Yeah, I think at this moment Vincent is very much in the same mood like in the previous game. Like, how do I survive this scare? But now at least he can start a counter attack, opening up
Feels like
the bishop and the rook.
Yeah. Can I not just go knight to h5 and looking at f6?
You can, but knight h5 you play rook g6. I will just block it.
Gotcha.
But okay, knight f6
Yeah, I
check,
guess.
because actually
Yeah.
you are supported by a lot of pieces. But she plays queen d1, not a move that the computer likes. Okay,
Well, she's
give
now
black the
is
chance of
that
getting
looking at
queen to e7.
Yeah, was maybe looking for the reroute. Yeah, onto h5 here with the check. But this doesn't achieve too much. The question is, do we block? We have a couple options for blocking, or do we just slide the king to the left?
Yeah, if you would have asked me a couple of moves ago, I would say, queen f7, and I'm very happy. But knowing that already, I feel happy with black. And long castle is being a serious option, just advocating king from the danger zone and then delivering tremendous pressure. And now Vincent will be trading the queens, and we'll jump with the knight to e5 or to h4. Yeah, this both, the rook is hitting on g5, but there will be some bishop f6. I felt like the knight jumps to e5 or to h4. I wasn't completely sure.
Bishop f6 is an interesting resource. That's what she'll go for. Does defend the pawn, at least for the time being.
Yeah, Vincent picks
gonna
up the pawn on
snap up a
g2
pawn of
quite
his own.
quickly. Yes, but there is some bishop d1 or e4. Okay, white is, but knight e3. You shouldn't have allowed this knight e3, because if the light squared bishop is captured, then black is not totally safe.
Yeah, this game
Wow.
completely turned on its head here.
Yeah, and now also black is winning material, because if the knight moves, bishop takes e4, wins not only the pawn but wins the house.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, the position's completely falling apart here for Afruja.
Yes, that's it. And then Vincent wins the game and wins the tournament by playing two completely crazy games that he will be shaking his head. And me as a coach, I will be very critical of that. No. I
Yeah.
don't care that you won the I don't care that you won the tournament if you win, but how could you have played like this? That's how I feel as a coach.
Yeah, that's a call that I think a lot of people would love to be a fly on the wall for, because yeah, that's probably a difficulty both as a player and as a coach, to be in a position where you come away the winner, but you still need to have that ability to look critically on your own play and identify those points where, if a couple things have gone differently, you wouldn't be at the top of the podium, you wouldn't be in that number one spot.
Exactly. Yeah. So now basically white has to design. I think, yeah, that's what Afruja does. The knight is trapped on h5. Vincent wins the tournament. Big congratulations to him. But the day for Vincent is only beginning, because we have a big talk about these last two games.
Yes, yeah, a big talk to come, but how seemingly poetic, though, this finish, if I may. The very first of the freestyle events from last year at the beginning of our circuit in Weisenhaus, it was Vincent Keimer who comes out on top, takes the first place slot. And now in our first live Freestyle Friday, streamed for the world to see, Vincent Keimer as well comes out on top. He kind of continues to separate himself and prove himself to be one of the best within the format. And it's a good example of what all the players below him in these Freestyle Fridays are chasing, what they're after, the level of competition that they're going to have to rise to if they want to qualify in and contest for that world championship next year through these Freestyle Fridays.
So I think, for example, Pranov, knowing that he's leading, he still has a game. We should be heading there. I believe he's playing up against Vohidov. A very interesting kind of end game, because it looks super drawish. If it would be a classical game, the players would agree. But with few seconds on the clock, is someone playing for a win at all, knowing the tournament situation, or they will finally feel like, okay, we both played a good game. What to do? We have to settle for a draw.
I think if you're Pranov, you definitely want to fight for the win because a win here puts you into second. Right now, you're sitting in third at 8 points. A draw will tie you for second alongside Marco Materia, but a full win gets second place, which is a few extra points and a sizable difference in the prize pool as well. So he's going to fight on as long as he feels like there are any winning chances. Right now, it's looking like a fairly drawish position.
Yes, if anyone, then it is black who can play. The good news for Pranov is that he can just sit and wait. Just shuffle the rook on the second. Okay, he first plays g3. It doesn't change anything because whenever black plays rook bc, there is a rook check on the fourth rank. That's the defense he's relying on.
So expecting this one very much so to fizzle to a draw in the end. A little bit more shuffling of pieces here, looking to see if anybody will make an uncharacteristic mistake. But we can expect both of these players' point totals to go from 8 to 8.5 and 7 to 7.5. A strong showing by both players here. Volkhodov as well as Pranov there. He's going to move up to 8.5, a share of second place there alongside Marco Materia, 8.5 points apiece, but still a full point behind the likes of Vincent Keimer. You can see a share of fourth place as well between Dao and Mohammadi at 8 points apiece. And then a three-way tie at 7.5 before we round out the top 10 here with 7 points. So that was the marker of making it into the top 10. Now, as you can see, all those players are going to walk away with Freestyle Friday Championship points there in the rightmost column. But it's Vincent Keimer who gets 10 to his name. Somewhat irrelevant for him in the overall arc of the year. Again, more than anything, what it means is none of the other players managed to get those 10 points, which they very much need if they want to get the Freestyle Friday bid to the World Championship. Pranov, he'll add 5 points to his total. He already led the overall standings. It's Marco Materia then, probably of all the players that we would look at as somebody who made some real progress today in the overall standings, being second to Vincent Keimer, but gaining 2 points in his chase against Pranov in the overall standings.
But on the other hand, I think also Pranov can be satisfied because he's leading the field and he gets 5 points. He also had a wonderful event. There were all these crazy topsy-turvy moment, yes, so it's very difficult to highlight that, yes, he could have won against Bortnik, he could have also lost that game. So normally, finally, it always equals out throughout the event. But he keeps the lead. I think Bortnik will be kicking himself a bit of not making more out of his chances. Because
I agree.
Yakub played a fantastic event, and that game against Marco Materia, yeah, when he could have captured back the rook with the bishop, and it's game over, and it's probably his tournament. And then things got completely out of control, finally even losing the last round to Konrad Holt, finishing with a disastrous tournament, having had 5 out of 5 and playing brilliant chess early on.
Yeah, such is the nature of freestyle chess as well as the Swiss format, right? For a lot of these players, they would have started the day very hot, maybe 3, 4, 5 wins in a row. And then as those pairings get more and more difficult, we start to see some of the losses, some of the draws come through, and the standings really begin to take shape. We speak about the ups and downs, the topsy-turvy nature of Freestyle Friday. It's probably not an easy choice. But Peter Lecco, I now put it to you. We've got to come up with a Make.com move of the day across 11 rounds. Was there any particular move, any player that impressed you the most, any move that stood out as being the linchpin for the results that we see here on our screens today?
You're actually putting me on the spot because I feel like we have seen so much action that I was about to lose my mind, yeah, because I was looking left and right, back and forth games, crazy games. And do we get some help from someone, some hint, any candidates? Because then if we get candidates, then it will be easier for me to select that. Of course, that was something very special.
Do we don't have any help, although maybe in the future, I will keep an eagle eye on the chat like the Twitch chat in the future. If any viewers want to throw out what they feel like was a move of the day, we can take some candidate moves from the chat in the future. I think today we might be being left to our own devices, though, to come up with a critical move. You know what's interesting is I can think of more blunders today that feel like they shaped the results necessarily than somebody who laid a trap, you know, and had, you know, maybe who created their own opportunity.
Yes, because of course I'm having Vincent games in my mind. Yeah, there was this game against Pranov when he captured the pawn, the poison pawn with the rook on e6, and I had this feeling like, no, don't do that. But I don't know if that is certainly not the move of the day. Oof, yeah, it's kind of tricky. Well, Pranov had, yeah, because somehow I have all the missed opportunities in my head from all the players.
Well, we can also do that too. I think
second.
it's okay for us to use a moment to be instructive. We could show maybe what a blunder, and show what the proper move would have been, right? You know, how to keep the game alive, or maybe to keep it within a winning position for one player where they ultimately did let it slip through their fingers. I think there's no rules ultimately when it comes to the make.com move of the day. The rules are for us to decide what qualifies and what does not.
Yes, well, actually, then I would even call for the game between Vincent Kam and Victor, the penultimate game, this G6 G5, because that was like such a shocker. It just highlights that how tricky and how complex and difficult freestyle chess is, that Vincent Keimer, basically, who has also won this event by surviving that move later on, could also have been fooled. Yeah, I think then maybe let's go with G6, G5 if you agree with me. But if you have any other suggestion, I'm absolutely free to.
No, and again, I like this because I think it keys into what is becoming at least one of the few common and identifying themes within freestyle chess, right? What are those early threats on the board? What are the things when you get, especially in these faster time controls, again, without the benefit of an analysis portion, you get dropped into a 3-2, blitz game. You only have so many seconds to identify a couple key factors, right? And I think one of the things that we'll constantly look at is cornered queens, cornered bishops, and the threat that they lay with just a single pawn move to open them up. And if you don't properly identify that threat, if you don't give that threat the proper amount of weight in your response, you can fall victim to it. Now, in this case, Vincent ultimately is able to weather the storm, but it could have been disastrous.
Yes, yeah, basically G6, G5 could have turned the whole tournament up and down. Yeah, so I believe that this definitely deserves to be the move of the day. Move number 6. It is move number 6, and black takes over, and white gets an almost hopelessly lost position from a seemingly normal one. I think there is no better way to illustrate the complexity of freestyle chess, fish and dome chess, than to highlight this moment.
Yeah, so simple as that, right? And the idea that a game could hinge on one, move 6, but 2, a pawn move. But more importantly, what the pawn move, as you're highlighting with these arrows here, represent in terms of all of the threats that it's enabling in one moment. And the way that the pieces, in some way, were already set up to work in concert with each other from the starting position, right? That bishop, that queen, that rook, they didn't move. They didn't need to move to be effective. All they needed was for their sight lines to be opened up, for the pawns to be in the right place. Vincent didn't identify the weight of that threat initially, and he suffered for it greatly throughout the game. But of course, due to the caliber of player that he is, he stuck with it. He held strong, and he was ultimately able to kind of weasel his way back into that one. But again, maybe a part of the conversation you'll be having is there should never have been that opportunity. We shouldn't have been in that position to begin with. We should have been able to see this one ahead of time.
Yeah, for sure. And I completely believe in it that after the move G6, G5, Vincent was falling from his chair. Yeah, he was so upset that how could I have missed it? And now I'm lost. Yeah, those are the thoughts that crosses your mind once you are hit with G6, G5. And beautiful highlighted, James, that the reason why it is so easy to underestimate the potential of this move, that black has not developed a single piece yet. Yeah, that is the absolutely shocking situation. Let's just put the pawn back to g6. So one would argue I'm making a developing move with the knight. My opponent will also maybe develop the knight to c6. It will be a slow affair. I'm coming out with my knight. I'm playing a strategical game. And all of a sudden, black ignores all of that and says, wait a second, I only need this one pawn push to make all my pieces come to life at once. And there is just no way for white to hold on to all the problems that that are opening up against him. And the next couple of moves, I think, just highlighted takes, knight e6, bishop d3, knight takes f4, bishop takes h7, queen e5. It would have been not only our move of the day, it would have been the game of the day if Victor would have rewarded himself, because he really deserved to win this. And also queen h5. Let me just show one more time this. What happens if Vincent picks up the rook? Yeah, if white plays bishop takes g8, then white can simply play queen f3 check. This is the human move. Let me highlight what computer says and why we don't like to play against computer. Computer says, I have this tremendous bishop g2 check. It's crazy. What is this? You are sacrificing your best bishop, and yeah, I'm taking this. You give queen f3 check, and if the king moves, then knight d3 or knight take g2 is the checkmate. Against king g1, you can even choose between knight h3 check or queen take g2 checkmate, both. And if you play rook f2, then queen takes h1 checkmates. And of course, the best move is knight f2, but it also does not help because queen take g2, king e1, queen g1 delivers checkmate. So basically, thanks to the move of the day, black could have delivered checkmate in 15 moves to Vincent Keimer. Absolutely amazing. If Vincent falls for bishop takes g8, of course, he was fighting on with knight f2, queen takes h7, g8, but after long castle, it's clear that black should have won this game 100 out of 100.
Yeah, I'm glad we had the follow-up though, and we showed these preceding moves, because I think it kind of brings full circle the reason why we've chosen it as the move of the day. The move of the day, it could have been the game of the day. Unfortunately, it didn't materialize there, and Vincent Keimer will get away with a little bit of something, ultimately taking the first of our live Freestyle Fridays. A reminder for you at home, if you want to participate every single Friday on chess.com Freestyle Fridays, you can go ahead and throw your hat in the ring with the world's best to compete, and who knows, maybe qualify for the 2027 Freestyle FIDE Freestyle Chess World Championship. That's going to conclude our broadcast, though. So, Peter, thank you so much for joining me. We are doing these live streams once a month. They will be every second Friday throughout the year. So while the event happens every Friday for you as a player, you can join us once a month to spotlight the top level play alongside myself and Peter Lecko. For now, though, that's going to do it for us. We'll see you in June. Until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and be good to each other. Good night.